OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's Thursday morning. This week is nearly over. It's been a very long week. Owen, how are you?
Very well.
You've had quite a short week, I suspect, travelling around the country, solving the peace process, getting Casement Park built, and you come home and you're like, it's like the end of the Lord of the Rings where, you know, they fix the problem with Sauron and then they get back and the Shire's been overrun. While you were away, Cork and Kerry have started the Field Mark II.
I thought you were going to, spit some fire about Johnny Ward and Nathan Murphy about what they'd done to the Shire, which is, of course, this lovely studio.
I mean, obviously, it was ruined. It was absolutely ruined. Poor Johnny. I mean, he did have a hit. On his hands, he has a hit where he was like, this is the moment where Troy Parrott announces himself.
Yeah, good call.
We put it out yesterday, but somebody said Johnny made us put it out, which was true, but still, we probably shouldn't have opened the kimono so revealingly. You didn't like that image, no?
No, I've never heard that analogy before. It's taken it very, very literally.
It's going to be one of those kind of shows. Welcome along, ladies and gentlemen. You can lay into us, but do with us what you will on the YouTube comments, and we'll take it from there. So, the peace process, is that where we're starting?
If you want, yeah, if you want. I mean, that's is that the analogy of talking about what we got outside Windsor Park the other night? Maybe is that like if we're talking about hits, that seems to have been something that, unsurprisingly, I guess, took off on our social channels yesterday on TikTok in particular. People want to hear what Northern Ireland football fans wants to say about a potential of an All Ireland team. It turns out
it was daylight and you were outside Windsor Park before the game. I wonder what it would have happened after the game if you'd stuck around and done your usual drunken fan stuff. What that would have been like as the clock ticked past midnight in East Belfast. What would the response to your gentle questions have been?
I don't know. Like, I wasn't necessarily going up to people in daylight even saying, do you want an All-Ireland team? Like, as I was saying on the show yesterday, you chat to somebody for a while and you're like, okay, they wouldn't be offended if I asked this question. There's a couple of people maybe in the other video about the idea of the Euros coming to Belfast in general that I didn't ask the question to, because I thought to myself, well, there's probably a sense here that they'd be offended by the question, and I mean, there's for no other reason than not wanting to really put anybody out, because they've given you their time to actually speak to you before a game. You don't want to be rude and ask them a question that they might react very, very badly to. So I think possibly things would have been okay, but that was always the initial plan. Do it before the game, don't do it after the game. And things might be a little bit easier.
They were very thoughtful. I mean, I'm sure there was lots of people who were less thoughtful, but that's always the way in these Vox Pops. But there was definitely well, I've thought about this and this is my position, as opposed to who the hell do you think you are? You know, it turns out that like when you talk to people about stuff, they feel strongly about things, but not to the point where it's worth 30 years of bloodshed.
Oh, but 100%. Anybody that didn't make the cut didn't make the cut because their thoughts were, I guess, aggressive or anything like that. That was not the case. It was just the ones that maybe sounded the best were put in there, and that was it. Everybody had an opinion that stopped to talk, and anybody who walked by probably didn't have anything to say, and that's totally fine. I'm not particularly surprised by it, to be honest. I know that you're obviously being a little bit facetious when you say, well, it'll be interesting to see what would have happened later on at night. Maybe there would have been a genuine fear for asking that sort of question, but I think what we saw from the product that actually did go out is that, I mean, it's not that it's no big deal, but it's okay to ask the question. It's okay to actually bring up these conversations.
Yeah. It's a very interesting scenario, right? Where the question about players from the 6 counties playing for the Republic of Ireland is one that is very contentious, right? And so, because of the Good Friday Agreement, everybody's obviously entitled to an Irish passport, as they should be, and I'm pretty sure it was the case before that anyway. But I think the football was one of the fallouts of the football, or one of the fallouts of the Good Friday Agreement, that agreement is now kind of written down and codified. Whatever, it exists, right? Somebody did make the point though that, like, how do you ever make everybody feel comfortable in each other's company if you continue to segregate everybody? Like, all the education system is segregated. There are Protestant schools and Catholic schools. How do you ever get everybody to kind of just realise that none of this shit matters if they're always segregated? So if the football team is always segregated, how do you make people less virulent in their identity when it's like an expression of something? You know, have we actually been coming about this all wrong? Like, the quickest way to I'm coming at it from the aim of a United Ireland. The quickest way to United Ireland is actually to have a team for Northern Ireland which is largely populated by good quality footballers who could play for the Republic of Ireland, but are playing for the place that they're from geographically right now. It's slightly counterintuitive, right? It seems completely counterintuitive. Yeah. But if, for example, McLean and Duffy and a bunch of others
played for Northern Ireland,
yeah, what are the Northern Ireland fans going to do? If James McLean had 125 caps, and had been at the Euros for Northern Ireland, are they going to be chanting sectarian abuse to their own players? It's a bit harder, right? Is he getting death threats from that kid in wherever it was in Belfast? I don't think so, right? I'm not saying that he should have played for Northern Ireland, right? Yeah. But I am saying that, like, one of the byproducts of this is that it's much easier for a group of fans to decide that they absolutely despise and hate people who are born 2 streets away. Much harder to do that when you're playing football with them. Much harder to do that when, and ultimately, in the long run, what's going to lead us to a position where everybody understands each other to the point where they're like, it doesn't really matter. We shouldn't be paying taxes to the Tories. We shouldn't be giving the Tories power over the island. Like, what's the quickest way to get there?
I think that there would be fewer voices of hatred towards James McLean from the Northern Ireland football fans if he played for them. That's true. But whether or not he would be completely immune from the vitriol that he gets from his own club fans sometimes in England, I'm not sure that would be the case whatsoever. I think that there is very much an open scope for him to get a lot of abuse from his own fans. And
I don't care about the English fans though. Like, just simply on the question that you were asking about what's the quickest way to get to that team?
But I'm saying that the English fans and the behaviour that we've seen, I think, could be replicated from the Northern Ireland fans.
Well,
maybe not the people that I spoke to.
Neil Lennon got death threats in Belfast.
Yeah.
And so, but that is a long time ago. Things have, it has been profitable for some politicians to whip up that nationalist fervour particularly in the loyalist community over the last 2 decades. And so you definitely see pockets of it. But isn't it harder for those people? Like, if he's busting his gut and if Duffy's coming up and scoring headers and they're qualifying for tournaments, like, it's much harder. Yeah. Whereas it's actually easier as a function of so the principle of parity of esteem was behind everybody in the north, and it's really important that people in the north are actually respected and their right to self-determination is respected. I just think that the longer term goal of saying, actually, you know what, if we maintain these football teams and you go in and you play with this football team, you're going to convince more people in the middle ground that you're not a threat. This isn't a threat.
And you see your people like James McLean or Shane Duffy not singing God Save the Queen before the match, and maybe the Northern Ireland fans will come around to the fact that, maybe that's okay, and maybe that's a tiny step forward.
Yeah, and maybe it's maybe it's much easier to have that conversation. We shouldn't be doing this. That's a relatively recent thing. That's not like they weren't doing that in 1922, as far as I know. So anyway, we can bring you some of the comments from the piece that we did yesterday. If you missed it, it's up on TikTok, it's up on YouTube. You can get the podcast of it as well. On YouTube, Lorcan says it's important to remember that the Northern Ireland fans are not a complete reflection of the Northern Ireland populace. Speaking as a Republic of Ireland fan living in Northern Ireland, that's the whole point. We know that, Lorcan. And I think everybody watching understands that. Not exclusively, but generally, the Northern Ireland fans come from one side of and that's my point here, is that there's not much for nationalists in the north to get behind when it comes to the Northern Ireland football team. There's not much.
No, I'd say the exception would be maybe people who'd be nationalist leaning and they bring their kids to a Northern Ireland match because they're living in Belfast or something. I'd say that might be the exception.
Come on, mate, I get why you wouldn't want to follow an All-Ireland team yourself, but why is it wrong to allow young footballers in the north who can compete all across the country in GAA and rugby the opportunity to declare for the Republic? They have as much freedom to choose who they want to follow as you do. and that's fundamentally the truth, and I understand that, and I understand that's the impetus behind it, and it was important. And if I'm the FAI, I'm doing everything I can to convince everybody to come over. The most recent kid, somebody Tyrone, isn't there? Who was that? Liverpool? Anyway. Music Man says, I think the main objection is more about the young players being brought through our youth system, where a lot of time and money is invested into their development, only for them to jump ship at the 11th hour. It's happened a lot. Yeah, and look, that's only going to continue. That is only going to continue. That's the thing. It is only going to continue. And so, anyway, Colin Rice says, very short-sighted individuals. Let's keep things as they are, because that's what those people are comfortable with. A 90-minute train ride to Dublin is too much, and a different anthem is unthinkable. Let's ignore that a large portion of Northern Ireland feel alienated and won't support the North, myself included. I found this depressing to watch.
There's obviously a very simple fix to that. It's a solution of people complaining about playing a game in Dublin is that the Ireland team would play games in Belfast regularly, and that's the way it is. It will be like a situation that I don't think many people will be too disappointed with around the rest of the country either. I think that's part of joining the thing together in this kind of fictitious scenario that we've invented.
Samurai says, we'd have to drop Aaron Levine, so absolutely no chance. Let them keep their team. I mean, look, Aaron Levine and badges and flags, they're all so important to us. Without them, we're not the same people. Except they're not.
Just Ireland's call knocking at the door there saying, how are you?
Jonathan Thompson says, I love the Republic team the same way those people love the North. I think it's way too late to change it now. I would love to see one Republic one day, but I think the teams would still have to stay separate. Is there a world in which Ireland is politically united and there are two football teams coming from the island?
Yes. The reality is that there's a world for everything in these sort of conversations, and vice versa as well. I don't think that there's enough respect for politicians, rightly so, to say, oh, we're going to take your cue and follow suit automatically with every piece of behaviour in our society. I'd be surprised if that ever happened.
I'm from Armagh. I support the Republic. I wouldn't mind an All-Ireland team like rugby, but I've always said it would never happen in soccer as it's too far gone. I mean, we did think that loads of stuff that was impossible would never happen, and then a load of stuff happened, and then it all kind of disappeared again. Le Merchant, or Lee Merchant, says, I'm as Irish as they come, a dub at heart, and if this was a genuine option, I'd 100% go for an all-island team like in rugby, because we'd be a lot better, have a better chance of restructuring football across the island. And to be honest, I'd love if the home of it was in Belfast, so we could have a football-only stadium instead of sharing one with rugby. Money could be spent on upgrading Belfast to the hub. I'm sure the game can be played there. It's an hour up the road from Dublin. We've gone from 2 hours to 90 minutes to an hour. This high-speed train link that we have between Belfast and Dublin, I like that. I like the peace dividend. It does hurt a bit to see so many Northern Ireland fans reject it and think we wouldn't want to join forces, but I guess they see us very differently to how we see them. I think there's mutual distrust on all sides.
Yeah, I know that when you kind of go through the history of this, and obviously we've done this a few times in the show before, but when you get into the Irish soccer split, for example, and the Cormac Moore book, the history is as much football politics as it is actual politics, and the split in the 1920s of where would the Football Association be based? Would it be based in Belfast or Dublin? Why not both? Why not actually pander to our own egos here and ensure that all the people who want power actually get it? Obviously there is a heavy political aspect to it all as well, but if you trace it all the way back, there is a lot of ego and a lot of power in the high-ranking football positions that led to this split emerging in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know,
that would also be an issue.
Well, it would. If you're in the IFA, you're looking at what's gone on in the FAI in the last decade, and you're going, no way. Sorry, lads, absolutely under no circumstances, no bloody way. And the IFA sit on that. What's the old man football board that gets to change the rules whenever they want? What's that? They're like one of the 4 founding football federations, and so therefore they have a vote. They were the ones who were voting on whether or not VAR can be a thing.
It's not IFAB, is it?
It is. Yeah. I mean, what? So you went, well, you'd have to give that up if you join. No.
You can't spell IFAB without IFA.
No, absolutely. Harsh but Fair is the name of the YouTube person who obviously, has appointed themselves the trash heap. Answers were very civil and polite there. As someone from the Republic of Ireland, I disagree that most people down south wouldn't want a one-island team. I think a clear majority would. And also no reason that all the games would have to be in Dublin. Could have a good percentage of games in Belfast, as far as I'm concerned, for that matter, in other parts of the island if it was feasible. I also get the point that if you're born in one part of the island, you should play for that part of the country as it currently stands. But former Northern Ireland manager Michael O'Neill mentioned it too before. God Save the Queen is the Northern Ireland anthem is anathema to players in the nationalist community in the north. Could you not have something that both communities could stand for with pride? Anyway, good luck Northern Ireland. I hope we both make it to the 2024 Euros.
Yeah, there would have to be a bit of an allowance for that to happen, and then it would obviously be a very special sort of very specific rule, the one you're alluding to there about people playing where they're geographically born, because that would mean that you're still allowing people with Irish grandparents who were born in England to come play for Ireland. It's just specifically around the 6 versus the 26.
Michael says people must realise the rugby team is something very different, as rugby in Ireland was and still can be a small minority of upper, middle and upper class people. The rugby brigade from the north and south are very, very similar, hence there's no real issue apart from the fact they had to modify the anthem a number of years ago. Football is a completely different animal. I mean, I don't think it's factually incorrect. It's just that I think that you could probably overcome a lot of this stuff very quickly, and probably there are generations who are overcoming it, except there are other generations who are just getting handed on the hate, as we see like kids sending messages to Republic of Ireland footballers. So I don't know. I mean, some people are saying it's depressing. Some people are saying it's really interesting to hear that viewpoint. What was were you depressed?
No, not at all.
Or happier or more?
I wouldn't say happier or depressed, just very intrigued. And also, I guess, that, as I kind of already alluded to, very kind of pleasantly surprised that this was an okay thing to talk about. Like, I mean, kind of like when you're framing the question, you're kind of a little bit apologetic about the kind of cheekiness of the question, to put it mildly, and people kind of take it quite well, because it does feel when you're asking that question, it's like it's almost like an imperialistic sense of we will subsume your team.
It's our turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait till you see what we're like as colonial masters.
Yeah.
We know how to do it. We've learned all the tricks.
That's kind of what it felt like initially, but all of a sudden then it's a conversation, and people are okay to actually have a conversation. But as I say, I think people who are happy enough to listen, hear your accent, stop and talk to you, are probably people who are of an open-minded view anyway. Yeah,
that's a fair point. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. If you've got a view on that, we'd love to hear from you. We had like over 600 comments on the TikTok that we put up yesterday. Like, what would the song be? I mean, I'd be happy to ditch. We could pick a good one. We don't have any, but we could find one.
Imagine if Sweet Caroline was the national anthem.
Sweet Caroline, the lads were talking about the fact that we only had one song for the rugby, and somebody mentioned Sweet Caroline, was like immediately poo-pooed. I think it was Joe was on, I don't know who else was on, Richie was on, and I don't know who the third person was, but there was like but you were at the World Cup. The karaoke thing is obviously it's a national pastime in Japan. It works amazingly well.
Yeah,
we should 100% be having karaoke on the big screen at matches. It works well.
Yeah, like, I mean, they do karaoke in Croke Park for big games. They plan the lyrics to Our Own Aveen on the big screen.
Well, wouldn't it be amazing if they did Sweet Caroline?
Yeah, it would. Certainly in breaks of play. And I know that conversation was around songs that could be sung during the game, but you know what? We could just absolutely take the piss of national identity and nationalism and just say Sweet Caroline's going to be the anthem, the national anthem. After everybody comes with their series orchestral numbers, we play Sweet Caroline.
Whoever wrote it would have to get a lot of royalties, so we'd have to buy them. We could just give them an honorary citizenship and pay the money. It's a one-off.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty easy trade-off to save this island, right?
Well, they'd also make a lot of money from the royalties that everybody. It's like constantly number one in the Irish album charts or iTunes. Let's move on, because the other bit of peacemaking that Eoin has to do now is to try and solve exactly what the situation is between Cork and Kerry in the football championship. You may have been unaware of the fact that there are some concerts coming. Ed Sheeran is playing in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and so therefore Páirc Uí Chaoimh is out of commission for the Cork versus Kerry Munster semi-final. That's where the game would traditionally have been played this year. It's their turn, and so Cork were like, look, we can't use that one, so we're sticking it in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And everybody's like, this doesn't seem like that big a deal. But then the Munster Council were like, no. Games in Kerry. Cork are like, no, game's not in Kerry. Games in Páirc Uí Chaoimh are games nowhere. And that's where we stand at the moment. Owen, solve this. Before you do, actually, sorry. Before we do. Here's James O'Donoghue and Paddy Andrews talking about this in episode 10 of the Football Pod. It's safe to say they aren't giving Cork a chance in the game anyway. Have a listen.
Kerry Cork is going to be moved to Killarney. So poor Cork are going to lose home advantage because there's work being done on Páirc Uí Rinn, and seemingly the playing surface in Páirc Uí Chaoimh won't be ready after the Ed Sheeran concerts in April. So 1995, the Munster final, 1995 was the last time Cork bet Kerry in Killarney. So what looked like a difficult...
They won't beat Kerry. They won't beat Kerry anyway, but why... Actually, they were saying they were going to put this in Páirc Uí Rinn.
Yeah, that was the plan.
What? Páirc Uí Rinn only
11,000.
11,000.
Yeah, tough. We were saying it about Antrim Cavan there a couple of weeks ago. Antrim getting home advantage in Corrigan Park. You should get your home advantage.
No. That's fine until they put Ed Sheeran on. That was like, you can't put Ed Sheeran on ahead of a GAA match if it's a GAA stadium.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher, that one.
I think that it was wrong. Like, the main match in the football calendar for Cork is Kerry. And they goes, nah, Ed.
I have a feeling the hurling's been affected
Ed's
as well.
got some great new tunes out there.
I couldn't believe it. But yeah, bring it to Killarney.
That'd be a good day out. Get us tickets for that one, Tommy. We'll go down and do that live.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Saturday evening in Killarney be lovely now, in May. They're not going to, look, Cork did well to turn it around and win the two but basically must-win games over the last couple of games against Down and Offaly. They are not going to beat Kerry.
But lads, they had absolutely no chance in October, November 2020.
I am going to go on record here. Kerry going to win that game and win it well.
James, are you not on the panel that day?
No, Hammer. Do you know what? It was a shock result, but it was one of those where if you were ever going to get caught, it was going to be that day. The weather, the kind of build-up was so Cork or poor, Kerry or brilliant, and it didn't match up. Do you know, it was just psychologically, I think Kerry took the eye off the ball there, which was a learning curve. Okay. I don't think it'll happen again. But if it's on in Killarney, there is absolutely...
Let's hope it's a sunny day in Killarney, so. On May 7th.
Yes, the game's going to be confirmed. 6 o'clock throw-in, May 7th. Cork are going to get the next two meetings in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. The Cork management team and players are withholding their counsel at the moment. The threat is they're not going to play the game. Páirc Uí Rinn or nowhere.
Yeah.
What are you laughing at?
Well, it's kind of funny, isn't it? That they have a stadium and it's just not available. Like it is different to Newbridge and nowhere. Like I will say that the relative qualities of the teams doesn't actually matter here. It shouldn't matter for a conversation like this. It doesn't matter if Cork are not going to win the game wherever it's going to be played. It's about competition fairness, and has the competition lost some integrity because this game has been taken away from Cork, given it was their year to have a home fixture? And the answer is no, because they're going to get it back in a couple of years. It's not like the game's been taken away and Cork are never going to have that game again. They'll have it back. They'll have actually more people in Páirc Uí Chaoimh when they play that game at home in Kerry in 2 or 3 years' time. With a squad, if you want to bring it back to competition, which I just said was irrelevant, with a squad that Keith Ricken has said is a young one that are targeting success in future years.
Why can't we back
that squad is going to have Páirc Uí Chaoimh games coming down the line when they come to their peak in a couple of years.
Why can't we play in Páirc Uí Rinn?
Like I would say that the real reason is that it's too small. That is why this game has not been played in Páirc Uí Rinn. And yes, there is precedent for Newbridge. That's where the Newbridge precedent is that the GAA were like, well, I mean, we're not gonna. This is a big fixture. It's Mayo. We can't be putting Mayo in a stadium that small. We got to get Croke Park numbers off them. The same thing can be said for this fixture. That's where the comparison lies. But where the comparison falls down is that everybody was angry with the GAA over Newbridge or nowhere, whereas it seems in this case it's Cork GAA's fault because they were the ones that allowed Ed Sheeran to come in and ruin the Munster Championship.
But this whole thing about it's our stadium, we should use it for our games. It's not your stadium. The banks own the stadium because you owe the banks tens and tens and tens and tens of millions. Now maybe they don't. Maybe they actually owe Croke Park tens and tens. Whoever the ultimate guarantor is, it's not Cork GAA can't pay their bills at the moment on that because the stadium massively overran. It was like 4 or 5 times more expensive than it was supposed to be. So you've got to pay, in this case, the piper, and the piper's Ed Sheeran and his fans, and you've got to take that money. Like, if you want that stadium, and the stadium isn't there for this year, the stadium is there supposed to be for the next 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, and it's supposed to be a facility that they're going to be able to use. But you've got to service the debt. You have to have the gigs. Ed Sheeran isn't available to come all the time. I mean, maybe he is. Maybe it's going to be an annual thing. But like, they got unfortunate with it. I don't, and you know, if Cork GAA have decided that their home game is going to be in Páirc Uí Rinn, and that's up to Cork GAA, and Munster Council should be told to go stuff themselves. I think.
I mean, I can actually, I know this is kind of disappointing to hear, I can actually kind of see both sides to this. And like on the one end,
good people on both sides.
Yeah, well, no, there's only good people on one side of this, but I can see the bad people and what they're saying as well. First of all, the fact that with health and safety regulations, by the way, this is a 9,000 capacity stadium.
Yeah, they have a bit of work to do to get it to 11,000.
They do, so it is tiny, but I can see just about why they could get this game there as opposed to, say, a hurling game, because of what happened last summer. Cork got absolutely hammered in Killarney. Nobody expects them to win this game, and that'll affect the attendance.
I was going to say, is there a possibility either way? So I think by fixing it for 6 o'clock on a Saturday evening, they have managed to juice the attendance figures up to whatever they lost for the fact that no one thinks it's going to be anything. I'd say the spread is between 9 and 11 points if you're pricing this up today. It could be 14 points.
If it's in Killarney, it definitely is.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. In Killarney, 3 o'clock on a Sunday, are you going to go? I'm not sure. The Kerry people will go. Yeah. Zero Cork people. Like the diehards, the family members, the backroom team family members, and
I think you underestimate how much Cork people love a weekend in Killarney, and of course 6 o'clock on Saturday it makes that an even more attractive case. But what I will say is that, like, last year was a COVID year and Cork people still travelled in their droves to Killarney that weekend. They weren't going to the games, they were just standing in a beer garden watching it. A couple of them got into the game because it was a 5,000 maybe or something like that were allowed in, but there was massive expectation there last year after what had happened in 2020, and that I think is dimmed this year. What I will say though on top of this as well is that why did Cork give away games when Páirc Uí Chaoimh was being rebuilt? Why didn't they play games when Páirc Uí Chaoimh was being rebuilt? Why didn't they play games in Páirc Uí Rinn at home to Kerry during that period? All of a sudden, Páirc Uí Rinn is really important to the Cork footballers. If it was that important, why didn't they play it there instead of giving games to Kerry during the Páirc Uí Chaoimh redevelopment?
And what happened there?
That's because of money. Right. And now all of a sudden, money's not important to Cork or to the people making the decisions here. So that for me I think is a bit of a contradiction. If Páirc Uí Rinn is that important to you, then it shouldn't just be there when Ed Sheeran's in town.
In fairness, there's a new administrative broom in Cork. They're progressive, they're very intelligent, they're like, you would say some of the best sports administrators in Ireland are in Cork at the moment.
Seem to be doing a good job. I'm not disputing that.
Yeah, and so maybe that's the change. Maybe they're looking at that and going, well, we shouldn't have done that then. We should have actually established that this would have been a hard place for Kerry to come, given them a game and tried to like help our team to progress. I do think I see your point, right? If you're Keith Draken, you're like, we'll give this year away, we'll build for the qualifiers.
Give away draft picks.
And for the next 2 years, when the games are going to be in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, we're going to give Kerry a right run because they'll be All-Ireland champions at that stage. But is he going to be around guaranteed? Is it automatic that he's going to be there to see the fruits of the labour this year? I'm not sure. Like, and also, if you're in the Cork dressing room and you're the management team and you're looking for a little bit of a spark, like, there's a chance here, right? There is a little bit of a chance. Literally everybody is against us. Like, the Ed Sheeran fans are against us, the Kerry football fraternity are against us, the Munster Council, well, they're 100% against us. What are we going to do here? Are we going to stand up and fight? Yes, we are.
Yeah, and I think that'll be quite a Cork thing to do. I will say that there didn't seem to be much of noise around this before the last fortnight, before this became a sort of, this game maybe changed.
I just assumed it would be in Páirc Uí Rinn. I didn't think that they would flick it to, because I don't think it's the glamour fixture that it has been. It's a Division 3 team against the best team in the country, and it's going to be
Division 2, like
Division 2.
Yeah.
Sorry, they were nearly a Division 3 team. It feels like a Division 3 team, but like,
right, well,
10, 12 points, could be 25 points.
It was in the calendar as Páirc Uí Rinn for May the 7th, and nobody was kicking up much of a fuss about it. Maybe they were privately, or maybe people that I don't know were kicking up a fuss about it. But this became a story when it was announced a couple of weeks ago that this fixture may be moved. That's when this really went into overdrive. It was like Ed Sheeran's in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, that's why the game's on in Páirc Uí Rinn, and away we go. But now it's become complicated, and now that it's like the game may be moved, everybody's like, yeah, you know what, it should be moved. So it'll be interesting to see what the Cork football team actually do here, because Cian O'Neill was pivotal to the Newbridge and Nowhere movement. He was the one who really put the foot down. But again, he would have been looking at that fixture, and Mayo Kildare don't have a home away agreement, whereas Kerry and Cork do.
I think the fact that that was a one-off game in the qualifiers, it was never going to happen again. Absolutely, Kildare had to do that. For Cork, I look, I do absolutely see the point as well. If you're thinking long-term about this, you give it to Kerry and you actually try and negotiate like some kind of better deal. It's like, I'm not doing it 1 year. If you're taking this game off us, you need to give us an extra year. So it's like, our trade is, it's not just one off, one for one here.
You're playing hardball.
Yeah, a little bit.
Then it becomes Limerick. Then it's like, right, let's move this into a neutral venue and let's just write this year off. And
then we'll get our home game next year.
Yeah. They did it with the hurlers, like, and they're going to Semple, aren't they? Clare and Cork that first weekend of May. But that's obviously a different situation. They play a lot of those big hurling games in neutral venues. So yeah, like I'm not sure. I think the reality is that maybe Cork might actually accept it and play the game in Killarney for future years. But you don't know. You don't know what that camp is thinking. You don't know how much they rate themselves. Maybe they have been like keeping the powder dry and are going big this summer. It's going to be very, very interesting to see if there's going to be another element to the story.
James O'Donoghue did not believe that they were keeping the power dry, and
no, not at all. Neither did Paddy, to be fair.
No, I don't think anybody does.
No,
this is the most written off team that I can remember.
Because there was no incentive whatsoever to keep your powder dry in Division 2 this year, given the massive risk of getting relegated, and also the massive incentive of getting into Division 1 again. If they for them to beat Kerry, they need to be as good as Galway, Roscommon, Derry, if not better. And they've proven that they're a step below those teams.
Griff says, would Cork GAA have moved the hurlers? Not a chance. Football in Cork is dead. Now, did you not just say they did move the hurlers?
Well, like, I mean, they've gone neutral on that one. I'm not sure what their game against Clare, I'm not sure what the original status was.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that was supposed to be Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and now they've agreed to actually play that in a neutral ground.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it would be good if, I don't know, do Cork need two stadiums? They probably do for the league. Páirc Uí Chaoimh might be too big for all those league games, but you suspect next season when they'll play as many games as they can in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, right?
Well, Páirc Uí Chaoimh is perfect for a league game at times when you've got 10,000 people in there. Like that's what you're kind of maxing out at quite often, especially in the early stages of the league when the weather is cold and miserable.
Michael O'Connor says, off to football again this morning. I love the balance. Tommy Walsh is going to join us in 5 minutes, so we'll be off to hurling in 5 minutes, and we just were talking about the soccer team before that and the rugby team. But sure, look,
which is technically football, I guess he could have been talking about either.
Perhaps he's one of those. He's got a universal view when it comes to the word football. He likes everything. Fair enough, and it's a style. Peter says, I suppose the real question is, will Kerry play their A team? Maybe not. I mean, they shouldn't. They can be vanilla all the way through to the All-Ireland semi-finals this year.
They'll be on the beach. They'll have won the big one this weekend.
A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Massive night in the Champions League last night as the second leg, Barcelona beat Real Madrid 5-2, 8-3 on aggregate before a full Nou Camp. We talked with Emma Byrne about this. She was actually commentating for Barca TV for their English language version yesterday, and she was just talking about the surge of popularity around it. You were watching a bit of this, you caught the highlights, and Graham Hunter was tweeting about it last night. It was one of the great Champions League nights in Nou Camp.
And the thing is, if you close your eyes and listened to some of the goals, especially I think it was Claudia Pina's goal, which put Barcelona back ahead on the night, it was that same sort of, that guttural roar that you just see Messi celebrating to. It sounded exactly the same, which you kind of don't really have in English football at all, which was remarkable. And it was for quite a section of the game, looked like this might actually turn into something that Real Madrid might be able to cause some sort of comeback, as they were 2-1 up on the night, and a couple of the goals were absolutely incredible, like that Zornoza goal that put Real Madrid 2-1 up on the night. It was like Patrick Schick at the Euros last year, right in front of the centre circle. She spots the goalkeeper off the line and over the head. The flailing image of the goalkeeper trying to get it just completely adds to the goal. And then that Claudia Pina goal, as I mentioned, just an insane chip from the left-hand side, wasn't it? So those two goals in particular just were of unbelievable quality. So Barcelona and Paris Saint-Germain into the last four of the Champions League. You've got Wolfsburg against Arsenal today at 5:45, and then Lyon Juventus as well, the other of the last 8 games.
Okay, Peter's been back in touch to give out to us. You missed the Ed Sheeran pun, lads. I suppose the real question is, will Kerry play their A team? Are you an Ed Sheeran fan?
I am aware of the catalogue. I used to be a bigger fan.
But then he appeared on Game of Thrones. You were like, oh, he's jumped the shark.
Jumped the shark, and you know, that's it exactly. No, not really. I was never a massive fan, but he's. I can see the appeal to an extent.
Go on, explain the appeal.
He's got a radio friendly tendency to produce music, and people like that.
He's been doing it for a decade now. I'm just looking here. The first album was released 2011.
Yeah,
and that went massive.
That was massive. Yeah. That was probably the peak of my I guess I don't want to say love. I've never really loved Ed Sheeran, but my peak of my liking for Ed Sheeran. It was kind of like Leaving Cert Summer, so you're in the same nightclub every weekend, and it's the same songs every weekend, and it's the same Ed Sheeran song,
the same bitter taste of rejection every weekend,
and with a side of cider. Yeah, that was the life. I miss those days.
Oh, such happy times. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. PSG and Bayern Munich finished 2-2 after extra time. PSG won 4-3 in aggregate. I think you were saying a key point to this is that it's all on YouTube and it was free to air. So those games ended up having huge audiences. Arsenal are playing tonight, and I think they're playing for the right to face Barcelona in the semi-finals. That game kicks off at 5:30, so you can obviously watch that. Can you watch that on YouTube as well? Are the English games on YouTube too?
I'm actually
they are. Yeah,
there,
they are. Yeah. So check out the DAZN YouTube channel. You'll get all those for you as well. Right, coming up this hour, Tommy Walsh going to join us in a moment. We've got the newspapers. We've got Mickey Quinn of Longford helping us to preview the Division 3 league final. We've got more from Brolly a little bit later on, and we'll bring you some highlights from the debate about whether or not booze should be banned at the Aviva during the actual matches itself for the rugby games in the Six Nations. Tommy Walsh next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Yeah, look, a lot has to go right for Munster to win.
Munster legends Alan Quillan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
I think the Munster fans are craving for a Munster win. There's more to this game, Niamh. This Munster-Leinster is different.
It's almost like a European Cup game.
It's nearly bigger at times. The rivalry is massive.
The Red 78 with Alan Quillan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
He's very detailed. He'd show you, an iPad and point out the lines of running and different things like that. But I just think, a word that was used to describe him as holistic. He's a holistic coach, and I think that's what Ireland needed. I think on the back of everything that's happened, they needed someone to come in and, and bring them together, and that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing, there's a great buzz about him, the way he speaks. You hear him in the press conferences. He doesn't put anyone down. He bigs up his players. He understands that confidence is low. He isn't looking at results right now. Obviously, there's part of him is, but he wants these players to be at a place where they're happy and enjoying rugby, and that probably hadn't happened for a long time. And also that they're all connecting. 7s, 15 are connecting really well together, and I think that's what he's done, because he's been transparent from the start. We know that they'll be gone for the last 2 games. They've been told to play IL. Everything just seems like it's so simple to fix. When we looked at a report and Greg has come in and he said, look, this is what we're doing, and I think it's brilliant to watch. But on top of that, he's detailing, delivering stuff. He's very into exciting rugby. He likes ball alive. He likes fit, fast characters, and we see it in the team he's picked in.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not having that. No.
Right, we're going to get into the papers. In the ad break there, you'll have heard a clip from our brand new Six Nations show. Alison Miller and Fiona Hayes talking to Aisling O'Reilly. Vodafone are proudly supporting the Irish women's rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. We can start, I think, with otbsports.com this morning for you. Don't write off Will Keane yet. That's Dan McDonnell on the football show. His timing was so unfortunate. Jerry Thorney talking about Damien Dialende. Munster's Gavin Coombs signs a contract extension, and Cian Fahey's piece highlighting what Ireland still need to do to get better about Tuesday's piece. I'm going to start with the newspapers this morning. The back page of the Irish Sun is, do you have to read this in the Keith Duffy accent? Republic of Thailand. Manning, we're running our rivals into the ground. Good free ads. Thailand, they'll come to you if you've got a puncture. They will drive to you and fix it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a service.
It certainly is.
There are other services out there, but that is a service.
Yeah, I can't think of any others though.
Ryan Manning believes Ireland's late shows will keep coming by wearing out the opposition. Troy Parrott scored a 97th minute winner against Lithuania on Tuesday night, and the boys in green netted after the 85th minute for the 6th game in their 8-match unbeaten run. Why is it? It's because we're fitter than everybody else. I just want to say that we might be entering a golden age for the sub-editors. Bandwagon. Did you get it?
Yeah, I get it. There were bans.
5 players are to receive 1-match bans because of the row at the end of last Sunday's Armagh-Donegal clash, but more could follow. Bandwagon, it's all one word, but it's not really bandwagon. It's because they're getting banned. Mm-hmm. I should just flick through all these. The Examiner, Ian Mallon's got an interesting story on, this is his new column, The Pitch, Inside the Business of Sport. The FAI said to kick $2.5 million off the value of the Ireland sponsorship, so they've reduced the price at the moment. It was supposed to be $2.5 million. Now it's going to be about 1.6, close enough to it. A reduction of just over 800 grand per year over the 3 years, which obviously works out at $2.5 million. And they currently don't have a deal at the moment. Interesting piece from Tommy Martin talking about how international football, it matters so much to people now because I think people are falling out of love with the fact that you're supporting corporations. The Netflixization of Manchester United, all that kind of stuff is feeding into a general sense of, actually, I really like my international football team. This team, they are who we are.
Yeah, I also feel that like there's just the geographical sense of things as well, which you kind of get more of an authentic feel to it if you check in on if you're a League of Ireland fan, or even if you're supporting a team overseas when they're in the lower divisions, even there's kind of a more authentic feel to it all.
Cork consider next move in venue dispute. That's Donegal Boyle's story on that, and you'd have to wonder if they're going to pull the strike. It's a bit nuclear, but it might be the thing for the team, is it?
The thing is, if they pull the strike, Kerry will just be like, I don't care, let's just play it there, and that'll be that, and I'll be like, oh, big hullabaloo over nothing.
Unless there's an ambush.
Unless the actual GAA chiefs are like, no, we really actually want to get money back because we've lost 2 years of attendances.
Perhaps. Let's move on to the hurling this weekend. I'm delighted to say Tommy Walsh is with us. Tommy, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, lads.
I'm always, I think we kind of, in the build-up last year to the game between Cork and I think it was Limerick, we were like, oh, this is going to be really interesting to see exactly where Cork are. And then Cork put out a bit of a shadow team, and I've always thought that it was a terrible mistake last season because it never gave them an opportunity to see in the full throat at that stage of the season where they were versus the best team in the country. There's been no false teams from Cork at any stage over the course of the league. They're going full bore for this, and I presume it's going to be the same this weekend, that there's just this sense of this team wanting to win everything now.
Yeah, because you can't beat habits, and good habits and winning habits, they're so important when it comes to the crunch time, Ger. When the game is in the melting pot with maybe 5 minutes to go and you're a pint up or a pint down, that's when you really need to have experience of being there and done that. So you start putting out shadow teams, Ger. I don't care if it's a Waterford Crystal or a Welsh Cup or a challenge match. If you're going out and you're only half-hearted in any game, that could happen to you then at any stage for the next year. Alex Ferguson always said it, like, if you did it once, you can do it again. And the opposite is also so true. If you can put out a full team in a crunch game and like say last week against Kilkenny got off out of the starter blocks. They were on fire, playing a lovely brand of hurling. They were scoring goals. The Kilkenny crowd was buzzing, and they stuck with him. And it was with 10 minutes to go in crunch time, Cork came good. And it's them kind of games stand here, Ger, when it comes to championship. The only time that it affects you, as you said, if you put out a dummy team, so when you do lose, say with 10 minutes to go, if you start falling away, you can start laying on the excuses. Oh, so we didn't put out a full team, we didn't really want to win it. But when you go to win it and happen to do it, well, that gives you the great experience that you can bring forward into the crunch times and championship. And like they're going out against Waterford this weekend, they'll be putting out, like we seen last weekend, they took off Patrick Horgan. I've never seen that before. So they do mean business, and they are preparing for a championship, I think, mentally as much as physically.
And how important would it be for this group to win something?
Well, I think very important for them to try and win it, that you're not going out half-heartedly. I think they will gain huge confidence from last weekend against Kilkenny. They always know a Brian Cody team. They will never lay down. They'll never play a dummy team. Every match is an All-Ireland final to that team. So a win over them in a league semi-final is worth its weight in gold. I don't think it's hugely crucial because, some of these lads, they have under 21 All-Irelands, they have Munster finals, more the older guys, they've Munster championships. So I don't think a title as such is hugely important to them. But I think if they could, win it, it'll give them huge confidence maybe down the road if they do happen to beat Waterford or happen to meet Cork. I think it's more important, to be honest, Ger, that Waterford get a title.
Okay.
I think this team has lost a lot of finals.
Well, before we get into Waterford in too much detail, because this is kind of our last opportunity to talk properly about Kilkenny for a while before the championship starts. We said last time you were on that we'd learn a lot more from them over the next couple of weeks, the last couple of big games they had, and you'd have to say the signs are very positive, but it's probably a fairly accurate reflection of where they are at the moment. They're just that little bit behind the best teams in the country. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I think the top three in the country are Waterford, Cork and Limerick. There's no doubt about that. The start of the year we thought Limerick were out on their own. They went through, a bit of a patch where things weren't going so well for them, but the two pretenders to the throne, Cork and Waterford, who have been producing it during the last couple of years and have been producing underage, they've been coming firing on all cylinders and definitely are up there just with Limerick, I would even say, at this stage. Just underneath then you have the rest, and Kilkenny are probably, in my opinion, probably top of the rest. But what's so exciting from a Kilkenny point of view is the brand of hurling they're playing. Listen, we all love the game the old way. Get the ball up, every forward wins his own ball. But the game has changed so much, and it's because of your competition. You're now not just playing against six-backs. Sometimes you could be playing against 7 or 8. So just lumping the ball forward and trying to win your own ball, it's not as easy anymore. It's grand if the other team goes 15 on 15, but most teams don't. Like, say last weekend now, you have Mellerick kind of, he's covering, we'll say, the centre forward. Say last weekend it was Park. He was covering him at times, so you're probably not getting the free pass out and over the bar. The centre back Mark Coleman then can go back sweeping, but it's not a sweeper as such. It's just that he's playing kind of a Roy Keane type of midfielder. Like, you're always back helping your defenders, and that's what Mellerick, I think he's after adding huge to that Cork team. So yeah, Kilkenny, I think where they've learned is in the first half, Ger, we saw they played a beautiful brand of hurling up through the lines at times, long at times, just varying it around. Towards the thought in the second half, when it really came down to it, it was pass back to Murphy and launch it up. So I'd say, if they go back and analyse that match, where it was won and lost, or where they produced the scores, we'll say, versus where it kind of fell apart as such for them. And I would say it was definitely with the way they probably went more long in the second half. And listen, there is definitely a place for that long ball, but only if it's to advantage your team. You're not just driving it up kind of with your eyes closed. And I definitely thought in the second half, a lot of balls went back to Murphy. And even if they do go short, Ger, it's much harder to build an attack from the goal, because so much can, a pass just maybe half a yard to the right or to left, it's gone from you. It's much more difficult to do. But if you're building from the half back line, so instead of turning back, you turn forward and take 3 or 4 steps, lay it off with a 20-yard pass, much easier doing that. Or drive it into the corner, you'll have your vision, your head will be up, and you might see a run from Billy Ryan or Mossy Keown or TJ hopefully when he's back. So I would like to see more of hurling like they did in the first half than the second. And
so are you concerned that they went away from that under pressure? Is that a sign that they don't fully believe what they're doing, or is that just natural because it's only bedding in? What's your instinct about that?
Yeah, from playing myself, so hard to change a style overnight. So I think it's not that they don't believe in it. I'd say it's just when it came to it, possibly they might have lost. There was a couple of ones that went out around midfield, maybe Keane Kenny and a few of them where they lost it. And maybe this, right, let's start going long again, the safe option, as opposed to maybe, listen, we lost that one, but we'll win the next one. So I think it's just, you made a great point there, bedding it in, like, that's what this is all about. So I think this could actually benefit us more, that they have the experience now of, right, lads, when it came to it, when we lost a couple of the short ones, we just started going long all the time. And as I said, there's no harm in going long, but just not all the time. and when it's not the best option. So I think they'll go back and look at that, and they'll work on training the next couple of weeks. That, right, lads, a couple of these could go wrong around the midfield and could go back over the bar. But let's stick to it. It has worked for us, and we have to do it because this is what the top teams are doing, and this is how we're going to win in All-Ireland. So I think the way they say you learn more in defeat than you do in victory. I don't always believe in that. But in this instance, I would, as regards, you learn more by seeing how the long ball broke down as opposed to what was working for you. And I'm not instigating that you go short all the time at all. A ball into the square is brilliant at times too. It's just that you don't go all one way or the other.
Do you think sometimes Cody gets a bit of a hard rap when it comes to conversations around innovation within hurling? Like, he's been getting a lot of credit over the last little while because, there's this idea out there that he's kind of moving with the times finally. But God, I wonder over the last couple of years, has he actually shown that innovation anyway? They just haven't been winning All-Irelands. Like, if you take the 2019 All-Ireland semi-final and getting the job done over that great Limerick team, I wonder, do we sometimes quickly forget some of those great moments from Kilkenny down through the last couple of years? They just haven't had the players to get over the line in an All-Ireland final. Yeah, I agree with you, Eoin. If you go back and look at the All-Ireland champions over the last couple of years, people tend to, what's popular, what's new, what's different. People love jumping on that bandwagon. But if you're in the Brian Cody camp, who has won the All-Ireland since Kilkenny? 2016, Tipperary, very much, movement, plenty of movement. Callan was kind of left inside in his own two-man full forward line. But definitely, a lot of long ball. 17, Galway won it. Again, the same thing, big physical team. Forward line, we're doing a lot of rotating, a lot of moving, Canning, Niall Burke and the lads. We played them in 2012, first time I seen you scored, they moved on to a new position, and you didn't know kind of who you were marking a lot of the time. You just had to pick up the nearest man to you, asking questions of the defenders. So 2017 Galway win, long ball. 2018 Limerick win. They weren't playing the game they're playing at the moment. 19 Tipperary win again with long ball. Then you have obviously Limerick kind of took over then after that. So has the other style of hurling made teams be champions? No. Limerick, yes, but Limerick have a brilliant team. I'd say they'd win it anyway they play it. But so go back to Cody and innovation. From my experience of playing with him, we changed our style in 06 to play that Cork team with a running game. We changed our style in 010 after winning 4 All-Irelands. Tipperary, they turned us over in that All-Ireland 2010 with different types of movement. Damon O'Shea put a lot of time into showing the guys how to move, and we had to get our heads around that. He innovated there, and has innovated again now at the moment. And so listen, he does deserve credit. That, I always said, Brian Cody was never black and white. Brian Cody's probably greatest skill was his common sense. He was able to treat players differently, treat teams differently, and very much a common sense approach to hurling. And he's definitely shown, he's brought lads in with him. Mickey Comfort, one of the top strength and conditioning guys in the country. I've experience with Mickey myself, just absolutely top class guy, very good at the spirit of the camp as well. Brought in Conor Phelan now, would have plenty of experience there, and he's won county finals in Carlow, he's won Fitzgibbon Cups. This guy is with Kilkenny Camogie, plenty of experience as well. So yes, I would say sometimes it's not just black and white. He's not just coaching teams let's get the ball in. He will change things up.
He did also manage the transition from one of the greatest teams of all time and keep the team competitive every year to the point where they were nicking some Leinster titles and beating that Limerick team. And we'll never know what life would have been like if he'd stepped away whenever you guys all stepped away. But at the same time, he didn't have that great cast of players to call on, and they have still been competitive.
Yeah, and you look at Manchester United after after Alex Ferguson left, changed around a lot of managers. Has that changed? You look at Arsenal, my team, the Gunners, back from the days being right. They got rid of Wenger. How long were they trying to get rid of Wenger? And it's only starting to come right there now. Under Arteta, they're starting to show maybe some potential there. You look at Bill Belichick over in the Patriots. They said he was the greatest manager of all time. Suddenly Brady was gone. The quarterback of the greatest football player. In my opinion, that, listen, I don't have much experience with American football, but I think he deserves to be the greatest footballer, I'd say, of all time. Maybe Jerry Rice might be up there with him, but it's not all just black and white. Get rid of the manager, suddenly everything changes. So I think he deserves huge credit.
Let's talk a little bit about Waterford and what they've done, because again, like the decision on Liam Cahill's point to stay was this, we just all assumed in the off-season that the Tipperary job was going to be his and he was going to go, and that was just it, because that was what we had assumed for a number of years. But actually, his decision to stay now makes perfect sense in retrospect. That is a group of players who are completely wedded to his style and who are hurling for him, and he seems like an absolutely brilliant manager. So of all of the stories that we would like to see in sport, the Mayo footballers overcoming their hoodoo, but Waterford winning an All-Ireland at this stage will kick hurling into the stratosphere, I think, just because this Limerick team are so good and they're going to be around for the next couple of years. But if Waterford could get over the line, what a rivalry that would be over the next couple of years. That's why we're genuinely excited about it and kind of hoping that we don't get let down again.
Yeah, and from a Waterford perspective, these players, forget about Waterford the county, but these particular players, they have experience, Ger, of winning. They've won minor All-Irelands, they've won 21 All-Irelands, they've won Fitzgibbons, and now look at Ballygunner. I think Ballygunner should be the template for this, the Waterford as a county. Try, get beaten. 7, 10, 15, 20 years. Stay going, up the standards, try new things. Suddenly then, this year, they're about to play St. Thomas's. And, I'd say they probably would have preferred to play St. Thomas's in the All-Ireland final, Ballygunner, because, they would have St. Thomas's were just, a small club in Galway, albeit they're very successful, but maybe they wouldn't have had the same fear they would have Ballygunner than Ballyhale. Ballyhale never lose Club All-Irelands. So to get them in the All-Ireland final, you're thinking maybe before the final, our luck is out again, we're playing the greatest club team, hurling team maybe of all time. And they go out, they're getting beaten. Things look like they were after coming back into it after Desi Hutchison's goal. Suddenly then Owen Reid comes on, who scored so many important goals for Ballyhale over the years. He puts the ball in the back of the net. And, even Shane Sullivan, has so much respect for him after that final. And also Sully from college. He died in the wool, Ballygunner, man. Loves hurling, loves the game. And he went down to control the ball. And it went under his hurl. And Owen Reid put the ball in the net. And looking at it on as a neutral, damn, you're saying you'd hate for that to happen to a player or a team in a final. They come back then and scored a goal with the last puck of the game. Shane Sullivan after that went on, had a glorious last couple of minutes, mentally very, very strong. So this is the template for Waterford, that you stay going. If it doesn't happen this year, go again next year and win it. So, Ger, I think as long as they're not beating your team, I think the whole country would love to see Waterford in it All-Ireland.
Oh yeah, spoken to somebody very close to that border down there, going, well, if we could just avoid them. If they beat everybody else but us, that would be fine. How good are they?
Yeah, no, they're excellent. They're building a huge panel. You see them last weekend against Wexford. Wexford were coming, and they were in the tough division of the league this year. And got to the league semi-final on credit. I think that they haven't been beaten, I think, this year, that Wexford team. And Stephen Bennett is out injured. I don't know what's wrong with Stephen Bennett. He was lighting up the league for the whole of the league, and he's after missing the last couple of matches. I thought they were maybe just resting him there in the last round of the league, but against Kilkenny, but he missed again there the weekend. So you'd be hoping that it might be just small little niggle that he'll be right for either this weekend or championship in 2 weeks' time. And they're missing Jamie Barron. Prunty wasn't playing again the weekend. So they're building a huge panel here, Ger, and that's, I think, the most important thing for them. The championship is gone now, where you win a match and you have 3 or 4 weeks off. You win a Munster final, you have 4 or 5 weeks off. Now you need everyone, because you're playing week to week. And they're building a huge panel. They're building confidence. I think, as I said, the Ballygunner thing, I think, will give them huge confidence. A lot of them players, they got over the line when time was at its toughest. So, yeah, they're good. Why are they now suddenly potential champions, Ger? You need forwards, right? Listen, they say defence wins championships, forwards win games, but any team that wins an All-Ireland, they have a marquee forward or the marquee forwards. And they have, we'll say, Stephen Bennett, they have Shane Bennett, they have Ozzie Gleeson, but they have the star of the show, the man that came back from across the water. You don't go over to the Premier League, if you're only an ordinary talent. You have to be the elite of the elite. You're talking about the Premier League is not just an English league or a British league. This is probably the best league in the world. And he was over there nearly making it and came home because the attraction of the game back here brought him back. We're after seeing what he's done with Ballygunner, and we're seeing what he's doing with Waterford. So he is the star forward that. Go back to the All-Ireland final again. Ball came in, they're under pressure. He's used to the ball out in front here. Caught a ball between him and his marker, buried it. The last couple of weeks he's been scoring very, very important goals. He could have scored probably 3 last weekend. So he is the elite of the elite, and himself, along with the other guys. One man will not win a championship. They've Tyke, the Burke centre back. So in the key positions, right up along the field, they've stars. You go back to the Tipperary team that won. It was very successful with 3 All-Irelands. That Callan, Paddy Maher, stars. You go back to the Limerick team at the moment. They have stars. The Galway team that go over the lines 17. The Canning, Dahi Burke, Garrod. So stars. You do need stars surrounded by a brilliant panel. And I think that's what gives everyone hope. I'd say within Waterford. That they have a panel, but they have stars within that panel.
And maybe trying to figure out how to win a big game without Austin Gleeson may actually not be the worst thing in the world this weekend.
Yeah, well, I think you're only a number on that. You're there as part of the panel, and just because he's gone, someone else steps in, and that's what the great teams. That's their mindset. That's their personalities. They're missing Stephen Bennett. They're missing Barron. Like I say, at the start of the season, would you say Waterford would be in a league final, or being probably top of people, in the top 3 of people's, predictions to win a championship without Stephen Bennett, without Jamie Barron, Prunty, and all these lads? I'd say you wouldn't. Pádraig O'Mahony's only coming back. I suppose the Ballygunner lads are only come back recently, so you'd say no. So I think Austin Gleeson's out. Someone else comes in, and on we go. So I was disappointed to see Austin Gleeson getting sent off last weekend, and it was, I know lads will say, I shouldn't have, but did anyone show him being shoved into the fence? And they're showing the camera angles there after the game, they're showing about 50 or 60, no, not 50 or 60, but they're showing, 5 or 6 times the replays of Austin Gleeson, just barely tipping back the hurl. I know, listen, it could have been dangerous, and not condone that for a second, but it was a little tip, I thought. But listen, right, I'm not saying red cards are red cards in the modern game, that's the way it's gone. But did anyone show the camera angles of him being shoved into the fence? No. And I thought, let's be fair about it.
Okay, so there should be a consequence for provoking the foul, and there should be a consequence for the foul as well. And I totally understand that. If you're having a chat with him this week in training, everything is cold, everybody is calm. What are you saying to him?
I was just saying to him, the game has changed, See, we've all grown up. The game has only really changed in the last couple of years with this kind of thing, Ger. When we grew up, and Austin Gleeson the same, he's 25 or 26 now. So he's playing hurling since he was probably 12, it's a competitive hurling since he was probably 10, I'd say. So you're talking about 16 years ago. Going back to the early 2000s. The mindset back then was you look after yourself. If a lad comes up digging you, or shoving you around, look after yourself. Don't be going over to me looking for help. Don't be going to your umpires. Don't be going to the referee. That's kind of softness. Look after yourself. I'm just saying, this is the old mindset, the way it was when all these players are growing up, and you can't just change that overnight. So you'll be trying to educate them and just show them, right, Austin, this game has changed. Right, yes, it might not look good that you're going over to the referee telling them, did you see that? Or going over to the umpire. But that's just what you have to do now. This is the way, because everyone, if RT aren't at the game, TJ Carroll are at the game. If they're not at the game, some sort of, internet, live stream will be at the game. So camera angles are going to pick up that. And you can't look after yourself anymore. The game has changed. So I'd be more educating them than giving them a scolding, because, Liam Cahill grew up in, Tipperary hurling, tough, from Ballingarry, that's tough hurling. This is the way we were brought up. But it has changed regards just looking after yourself, And so that's what I'd be saying to Dawson during the week, that listen, let's change this around now. DJ Carey, I remember DJ had a great one. Now DJ never will say looked after himself. DJ said toughness, take the belts, and punish him on the scoreboard. And he was dead right. That is the real toughness. And but I remember we were playing a team one time, and we were talking about that. We're playing a tough team, and do we look after ourselves, or do we maybe go to the referee, or what? What was the thing? Do you punish them on the scoreline? So DJ stood up one day and he said, "No, lads, we'll punish them on the scoreline. No fighting fire with fire." He said, "I was marking a lad one day," he said, and he was digging me all the game. And I said, "DJ, no, calm it now, we'll punish him on the scoreboard." Next ball, he said, came in, I buried it, he said. And I said, "I not finished his career." Well, he never played for that county again. So, no, I'm not going to tell you the county or the name. I know who they are, but I wouldn't insult them there or that like that. But I thought, we still talk about to this day, like, it was one of the glorious sayings before a big game that I've ever witnessed. And like DJ, though, I wasn't as mentally, we'll say, tough. Regards, if a lad hit me, we kind of, getting back, kind of. But DJ was the toughest of the toughest. You hit DJ, he'd never hit you back. Next time you got the ball, he'd block you. He'd take it off you. He'd bury the ball in the back of the net. And Brian Cody, that was always his mindset to us, and that's what he always said to his teams going out. That's the real toughness. Take the belts and get on with it. So I think, that's what you'd be trying to maybe have that conversation with Austin during the week,
What would you have done if you were shoved into a fence?
Next question.
How long would the suspension have been?
Listen, I've often presented medals around the country. I can't do it. I'm very busy, but I have from time to time. And nearly the first thing a lad would always say to you, he'd be gritting his teeth, shaking your hand, say, "If I was marking you," he said. And you know what he do to you. So, yeah, no, listen, I think you know yourself what I would have done back.
Who's going to win? Give us a prediction. It sounds like you're leaning Waterford.
No, Cork. All we talk. No, I think it's going to be a fantastic battle. I think it's going to be a battle of speed. Cork have unbelievable speed. I think, down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, it was huge, I'd say they outnumbered Kilkenny supporters, probably, I don't know, is there 16,000 at it, probably 10 or 12 or 13,000 probably Cork are behind this team. They sense there's something coming down the line. They like the players. So there's going to be huge buzz in Thurles this weekend. And I think that's the way they're playing. They're playing with that razzmatazz, that Cork team. And they're up against what Cal brought with Waterford, a mental toughness, a toughness that they're never bet. And so I think it'll be a huge, battle, both mentally, and I think it'll be speed versus Waterford play it up the lines and try and get into a few moments of genius from the likes of Desi and Shane Bennett, and maybe if Stephen Bennett is playing. So I think just the way it's going at the moment, I think Cork are primed for it, and I think it could be Cork's time to win. Yeah.
All right, we were talking in the football about a potential trilogy between Kerry and Mayo. This is the start of a potential trilogy between these two over the course of the rest of the season as well, and I for one am fully signed up for it. Tommy, good stuff. That was great. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Great stuff there from Tommy Walsh, helping to whet your appetite ahead of the weekend's hurling. That game is live on TG Car on Saturday evening with a 7:15 throw-in. Cork versus Waterford. The Division 2A final is Down versus Westmeath. Derry Sligo's Division 2B. Tyrone Armagh is 3A final, and Fermanagh Longford is the 3B final. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Breaking news this morning, Formula 1 have announced a Vegas Grand Prix for 2023. We'll talk to you a little bit more about that later on. Vegas is like all of a sudden one of the best sports cities in the world.
Yeah, and Formula 1 are going for 3-4 races potentially in the States if they have their way over the next little while. So it's going to become a very US-centric thing, just the explosion of the sport over there. One of the great marketing stories of recent years.
Yeah, everything Formula 1 is exploding in America. All of their media, all of a sudden, it's off like this tiny base where it wasn't a thing for ages.
And is that because it came from a low base, I wonder, and therefore the only way was up, and when it went up it was going to explode? Or is it because there was something very something that speaks to the American people specifically about the way it's being marketed and about the sport in general?
I don't know.
That makes it American sound. It's probably a bit of both.
Because Redneck America was fully behind motorsport, but it was like the Daytona thing and the NASCAR, and this was always seen as like a competitor, and so therefore they couldn't break into it. Like in the 90s they tried but failed, and all of a sudden it's like
turns out a big country, there's a lot of room for a number of different sports.
Yeah, it's maybe it's incredibly successful compared to other markets, but not compared to other sports in America. But it doesn't matter because, as you say, the amount of money that's sloshing around the system is so big. It's 8:40 this morning. We're going to turn our attention to Gaelic football. I'm delighted to say we've got Mickey Quinn with us. We're going to talk to him about the Division 3 final. It's Louth versus Limerick. The Limerick story is fairly remarkable, but the Louth one, I think, is the one that has attracted most of the attention. Mickey, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger.
Before we talk about the final, the Longford season was a complete roller coaster. You'd great wins, hard fought wins, some crushing defeats, and then Lazarus-like recovery, almost as if you could just blink off the defeats. What kind of a season was it so far in the league for you guys? How did it go? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, look, it was probably hit and miss, very inconsistent with probably ups and downs. But again, probably we're late starting back with management probably set up later on in the year, and then losing numbers, not committing, and it was probably trying to get a firefight for as long as we could, and we probably put in a few massive performances, winning games against Westmeath and Laois away from home were the two games that we probably looked at and said, nah, we're not going to win them, but they were the two that probably got us over the line. And then we kind of Louth salvaged the draw against us with a last minute free that got them a point. So yeah, it just shows you how close the divisions are. Limerick gave us a good clip in first round of the league, and then we played Louth and drew with them, but it's just amazing how quickly it can turn, those two teams pushing on for promotion and we're fighting for relegation then, and just with the skin of our teeth stayed up.
I heard you interviewed after one of the games where you kind of talked about your own role, and there's like a semi-coaching role on the field of play as the game is happening, and you said this kind of suits you at this stage of your career. How formalised is that? Is that something that you're actually actively talking to the management team about? Is it just naturally the role that you play when you have your experience?
I suppose probably a bit of both. You're kind of probably playing that position at 6, you're kind of in and around it for your own kickouts, opposition kickouts, and you've players around you that you can kind of talk to and hopefully give instructions and help them out as best you can. And I suppose it's kind of suited me with that game that I suppose if you open your mouth that bit more, you can save the legs a little bit. So that's definitely helped me a bit, getting a few lads to do a bit more work around me rather than me. But no, I enjoy it. I suppose that's probably the background with the teaching too, that you're kind of coaching / teaching and you're open to that. And it kind of works at the moment, especially when we have such a young squad, that there's lads that are eager to improve and learn, and if they're open to listening to a bit of feedback or a few instructions that might help me and help them as well.
I remember talking about Dennis Connaughton years ago, talking about how difficult it was to get people to commit, because the inter-county grind is difficult, particularly when there isn't a whole heap to look forward to. You talked about getting lads to commit at the start of this season. Was there a particular reason why it was difficult this year, or what was that like actually compared to previous seasons?
Probably just the unknown there of what was going to happen and what the new setup was for such a long time, and it was an easier option for guys to probably opt out than opt in. And the other thing is probably with the last 2 years that we're after having, people have probably realised, look, there's more to life than just training 3, 4, 5 times a week, and they start to realise, okay, hang on a minute, I can take a step back here, and I might come back in a year or 2 time and stuff like that. And that's been probably happening a good bit in Longford, with guys opting on and off for a year or 2 here and there. And you can't blame guys either, because I think the thing with Division 3 and 4 is that carrot there of what the reward is for players, it probably isn't there as much as the Division 1s and 2s, and there has to be a huge element of enjoyment in what you're doing in order for guys to commit and stay involved in setups like that. So I think that's a big thing that it's across the board, that enjoyment has to be there. And look, at if you're not winning and the divisions are difficult and you're coming up against teams that might be giving you a clipping, but you'd hope with the Tailteann Cup coming on board and Division 3 an opportunity there, playing teams on the same level as you, that you can probably entice guys to stay around that little bit more.
Are you excited for that, actually, the Tailteann Cup?
Excited and wary of what way it's going to pan out. Like, you kind of look at it now and you see the teams listed out after the weekend, who's going to be in it, and you think, geez, that could be a ding-dong battle. Like, I don't know what your odds on and who's going to win it, because you're looking at some of the teams there from down to Cavan, if they end up not progressing on in the provincial championships, that there's a huge opportunity for up on 7-8 teams that could actually contest it and win it. But it all depends on what happens from the gap from league to provincial championships, and then the next gap from provincial knockout to when the Tailteann Cup is played. And a lot can happen with guys maybe opting off, or maybe morale been low after a defeat in the provinces. So yeah, I think that adds another layer to it, that there's so many teams that could put their shoulder to the wheel and really win that, and hopefully it gets the promotion that it deserves.
What's the most important thing when it comes to that promotion from your perspective? Is it simply games and television? Is it good fixtures and good stadiums? What's the key to promotion in your view?
Yeah, I suppose it's probably a mixture of everything. It's the lead up to it. Like, I think probably 2 weeks out from a competition like that, there should be a big selling point of probably the players and the promotion of it, and then kind of getting a brief run through of the different counties and where they're at, and see that it is important to those counties. And then again, that it's promoted to fans, that, you know, you're looking at the Division 3s and 4s this weekend, and you're looking at probably the key players for Limerick and Louth, and thinking, right, there's not too many people that have heard or know a whole pile about these guys. Like, Samuel Roy has probably hit the headlines this year a lot more than others with his score and exploits, but there's an awful lot more players in Louth and Limerick that have brought them to that level, and seeing more game footage of these players will give people an appreciation. Well, Jesus, there is good players out there, and it's not just your one or two big names per county. Like, there's more than that. And you know, if you were to name off one player from each county, I think everyone's probably able to do that. But when it comes down to seeing more game time and footage, you get an understanding and appreciation that there's a lot more out there than just the guys that kick the scores.
In terms of this game this weekend, how important is it for Louth and Limerick? Because they're both on different journeys, but it's fairly similar in terms of the turnaround that they've experienced in recent seasons. And you can kind of see how a season, it's not going to be derailed, because it's been a brilliant season. Whatever happens from this point forward, promotion to Division 2 for both those teams next year is going to be a huge thing for them to be able to hang their hat on. But a little bit of silverware along the way is a massive shot in the arm. So you can see how, for some counties, these games have in the past not actually mattered that much in the grand scheme of things. But for these two, it feels a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that's something that probably creeps up a little bit in some of the divisions that, or those finals, that it's an opportunity there for silverware for Division 3 and 4. And once you get to Croke Park, you have an opportunity to win something in Croke Park, whereas we'd probably be on the other end of that when you get to Croke Park, it's not really much of a reward playing in Leinster semi-finals against the likes of Dublin. But I think they're really, how both teams probably got back to training probably last night and reassessed where they're at, and probably strapped up after probably a tough league campaign, and injuries are fairly good, but both teams will be really pushing to try and get a bit of silverware, and that kicks them on for the Tailteann Cup or the provincial championship, that they can actually, okay, our season isn't finished here, you're getting an extra game by playing a league final, and then you're off into your provincial championship, see how that goes, and then Tailteann Cup. And I think that was probably the most enjoyable part for any year that I would have played in. It's playing the most games, and there's years there where you might play 2 championship games, and some years that if things go well you might get 5, and getting more games in, whether it be a league final, Tailteann Cup, championship or the league, that the more games you play, the more you're going to come together as a team and learn and improve.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like basic arithmetic. games are great. We like games. We should have more games. I mean, I realise it's taken us 35 years to get to the point where we're going to have a bit of a dog's dinner, but at least there'll be some more games. So maybe we take the little victories along the way. Tell us about Sam Mulroy and how good is he?
Yeah, look at it. Probably Mickey Harte's setup that he has there, with whether it be with Tyrone or with Louth, he's built his team around the way Sam is playing and what he offers to the team. You know, there's nothing new or groundbreaking with what Mickey's doing. It's probably the same canvas that he's working off. He's set up really well defensively, and then when you can try and counter-attack from there and create the scoring opportunities, that Sam has been the one to chip in and get those scores. But you know, Kieran Byrne, Bevan Duffy, Conor Grimes, there's a few other guys, Tommy Dernan there at midfield, that has been probably long servants for Louth, and they've offered something else there, in that probably setting up defensively and giving opportunities to Mulroy and other guys in the forward line like Grimes and that to get scoring chances. I was going through it there. I think he's 42% of Louth's overall scores, but of that, 75% of his scores, I think, 45 points from frees and 45s. So like there's definitely a game plan there to play a strong running game, and if they're running at you hard and they can draw fouls, they'll draw fouls, and they're quite happy to take their frees, slow the game down and play it on their terms. And the way Mulroy is kicking, just outside the 45 of his scoring range from frees, and you've probably seen highlights on that some of the frees he scored, and the one against us to level it at last kick of the game, it was like that. It was on the edge of the 45 and strong wind against him, and still managed to kick it. So that's a massive addition to Louth and the way they've set up. Limerick, on the other hand, similar enough, but their game, they're a strong running team, and I think Croke Park is really going to suit Limerick this weekend. The wing backs there, wing forwards, Childs, Peter Nash, Jason Ryan, Hugh Burke and Robbie Burke are causing a lot of trouble in the full forward line. And it's going to be, I think, an open game, but I think one thing that we see from both teams is that with that running game, and if there's space there, that there's going to be goal chances. And I think Limerick and Louth have definitely created lots of goal chances throughout the league campaign.
It felt at the end of his Tyrone tenure that Mickey Harte was not being criticised for their failings, but kind of a sense that he was maybe holding them back a little bit, and they needed a new change of direction, and they got their All-Ireland win. Whereas now Mickey Harte is getting a lot of credit for what Louth are doing and getting back into the Division 2 football. So where's that graph at the moment in your view with regards to the stocks of Mickey Harte? Yeah, look, it's he has a template for a game plan, and that has proven and shown that it's worked. And if you stick to it, that it can really cause trouble from Division 1 right down to Division 4 and work in those divisions. But I think Tyrone were maybe on a different trajectory, that they had such quality forwards, that everyone wanted to see those guys play and offering a little bit more, and maybe it didn't suit some of those players to play that maybe defensive style of football. But again, you can't take away from what he's done with Tyrone and what he's done with Louth at the moment. It shows you that there's a template there that works, and if players buy into it, you can really push on and make huge gains and improvements. At the end of the day, winning games, that's what's going to get people and players interested in playing. So he's done that, and it's going to be a difficult division for them next year, but they're on the upward curve, and it's a lot easier to be up in Division 2 than where they're coming from Division 4. You obviously are looking at longer term trends and stats and analysis. When you're in games, are you seeing a difference in the style of play from the teams you're playing against, and even what you're trying to do yourselves? Like, where is the game trending at the moment? Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of gone both ways. You go back, and I think one of the things that you notice from watching your Division 1s and 2s and down to Division 3s and 4s, that probably 3 and 4 are trying to do the same kind of things in pressing, kick-outs, setting up zonal presses, maybe false presses where you might let the ball go short and then put a squeeze on. But when you've
different keepers and different the likes of Niall Morgan, Rory Beggan, that if you put on a press and it's played long over the top, he's taken maybe 10, 12 players out, and it creates a scoring opportunity straight away. Whereas I think that style of playing short kickouts or really short range kickouts to your full back line or even half back line, you have to work it past 12, 14 players to get up the field. Whereas I think it's gone to the stage now where teams are looking mid-range and long-range kickouts. You're creating an attack straight away. If you can get that ball down on the tee and out long, it sets a platform that you can take out maybe 6, 7, 8 players out, opposition players out with a kick out, and start attack straight away. Whereas I think previously possession was 9/10 the law. I think it's got to the stage now where it's getting that ball into the forward line more and probably quicker is going to create scoring chances, but probably create major scoring chances rather than settling for clipping over a point. That if you can get it down to the other end of the pitch as quickly as possible, there's opportunities for goals.
My last question on that is that anything to do with the mark, or was that happening anyway?
I don't think so. Maybe it probably is helping it a little bit. But if you look at some of the scores that are goal chances, maybe Tyrone's at the weekend, kick long wasn't a Canavan, and then another kick inside to McCurry, and McCurry goal. Whether that was a mark or not, or whether he stopped for the mark, it probably did help in that situation. But I think it might have promoted and kind of maybe fast-tracked management and players thinking in probably not being afraid to take that opportunity to go long. Whereas in the past, maybe it was like, oh, don't go long, safer to have possession. So, yeah, it might have fast-tracked things to think that way. And I think I heard Zach Toohey talking a little bit about it at the moment, that with Geelong there, that their mantra at the moment is kick the contest, and they're confident enough to win those one-on-one contests because they've done a lot of work on training, and I think that's the level that it's at. And listen to McCurry talking as well, similar about those 50-50 balls, that if you can win them and back your forwards and your midfielders, that if a keeper can kick it out or a midfielder can kick it into the forward line, and they're going to compete and contest it and win it, that the more times it goes in there, the more chance you have of scoring. It's fairly basic or rough and ready thinking, but the more opportunities you create, the more chances you have of scoring. And I think in the past it was possession in your own half and middle third, and that possession counts for nothing if you can't actually penetrate the opposition.
Yeah, look, always really interesting to have you on, Mickey. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks a million, man.
It's Mickey Quinn giving us his thoughts there about the Division 3 League final. I think that's interesting because it's kind of a little bit different to what's going on in hurling. Listening to Tommy talking earlier on, teams are trying to take a little bit of the contest out and skew things in favour of their own team and possession, whereas in football they're like, actually the break even on this point is if we score a goal out of these long balls, then, you know, if we do that twice over the course of the game and we lose possession 5 or 6 times, but they don't score off every single one of them, we're still up. Yeah, and also I think forward play at the moment is in such amazing shape that it's not really 50-50, or they're spotting the run, they know what the run is going to be. Yeah. They're jinking one way, they're kicking it the other way, it's a bounce pass into space. It looks direct, it looks risky, but it's not at all. They know that their man is going to win it maybe even 70% of the time. Yeah, and the scoring zone is getting bigger and bigger. Yeah, well, that's the really intriguing thing. And like, I mean, we quite often in the league you get an even bigger scoring zone because of the outrageous conditions, but also as well when you look at some of the figures that the likes of Quigley and Mulroy have put up already this year, it's like, okay, you foul anywhere inside the 45 metre line, and that includes over by the sidelines, you're in a spot of bother. How close are we to saying Limerick are dual county? Well, I think they would say themselves that they have been for a while, that they should have got themselves over the line in the Munster football final in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, in the John Galvin era. So I think that they're back to where they feel they belong, which is just below the bottom tier. And I mean, I know that I'm not sure where the investment has gone. It's been mostly hurling, right? That they've been existing. I don't know. I mean, I don't think JP is just like an equal opportunities. Right. Okay. I don't know is the honest answer to that, but they've been tipping along nicely for the last little while on that side of the Munster
football championship will be interesting. Who will get to the Munster final?
It looks like they're putting the same effort into their football academy as they're putting into their hurling academy.
Right.
That's what the word on the street is. That.
Yeah, you've got Paul Kinnerk involved in the football side of things as well. Do you on an academy level? Obviously,
that's the
his
rumour.
background
Yeah.
is football.
Yeah. All right. John Duggan is with us this morning at 9 o'clock. John.
Ger and Eoin, how are you doing?
It's Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. How are you getting on?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad, thanks.
Where do we want to start?
Well, the breaking news, lads, the Republic of Ireland women's squad has been named for the Sweden game. Such a crucial game in the World Cup qualifier Tuesday, April the 12th, Europe, naming a 27-strong squad. So there's a first official call-up for the London City Lionesses midfielder Lily Agg. Also, 6 players in the panel from the SSE Electricity Women's National League, including the Shelbourne duo Chloe Mustaki and Abby Larkin. Diane Caldwell, Savannah McCarthy, Niamh Farrelly, Emily Whelan, Aoife Colvin and Saoirse Noonan will all miss the match in Gothenburg because of injury. The girls in green currently second in Group A behind the Swedes. Not expected to win there, but if you got something out of the game, it would be so important in terms of potential qualification or a playoff spot. 91,553 people watching at the Camp Nou yesterday, a club record for women's game attendance to see Barca beat Real 5-2. Very impressive stuff. We have subs set to be approved by the Premier League today to go to 5, 14 of them. The clubs need to say yes for that move to happen. Now, it is being led by the international board, so it's not an English football thing, it's a wider thing, but you'll have 5 subs next season, only going to make the stronger clubs stronger, you'd have to think. But one of the managers who uses very few subs actually is Pep Guardiola. We've got golf. The Chevron Championship is the first women's major of the year. Leona Maguire and Stephanie Meadow in that. So that tees off in Rancho Mirage in California later this afternoon. And also the Masters this day week. I'm sure we've got the OB planned for Washington Road, and I'm looking forward to the details, lads. Rory and GMAT.
Private jet is...
Yeah. I just didn't know anything about it. I'm sure I'll be packing my bags at about 9:05 now to go out to the airport. First time since 2014 that Rory is using the week before as a tune-up, and he says that's because he's already done the bulk of his prep.
I was at Augusta the last couple of days, and I just went there on my own. I didn't go with any members. I didn't sort of do the whole stay on property, and I just wanted to come and see the golf course. Obviously, there's some changes to the golf course on 11, on 15. 3 new greens, 3, 13 and 17 are all brand new greens. So I just wanted to go there and just see that for myself and sort of do a little bit of a scouting trip that I haven't really done the last couple of years. So that's a little different maybe, but it was good to be there, good to see the place, and at least coming into this event and playing this week, I don't feel like there's a rush to get there next week and cram and prepare. I feel like I've already done the most of my work, which is a nice feeling.
Maybe it's better for Rory to be playing this week rather than thinking about the career Grand Slam, because only 5 players in history have ever done it. Do we know who the 5 are?
Oh my
Tiger,
God.
Jack.
Sam Snead?
No.
The guy...
Palmer.
No.
Arnold Palmer didn't do it. The guy before him who had the car accident. Who was that?
Yeah, that's one of them, but I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Ben Hogan.
Ben Hogan.
So that's 3.
A very fit man.
Oh,
Gary Player.
Yeah.
The most highly travelled man on the planet.
Yeah.
And therefore the most polluting.
Yeah.
A lot of hot air in Gary Player's life.
Yeah, big time. And I'll give you the clue for the final one. The shot heard around the world.
I would have said Ben Hogan, but it's before that.
It's Gene Saracen, who made an albatross in 1935 at Augusta on the 15th.
What have we got like a full house of ways that Rory McIlroy has built up hope the week before?
Well, Clayton Skaggs was the best one. This mind guru, Clayton Skaggs, and the juggling. That was definitely one I enjoyed.
Yeah.
What was that?
There was about 2 years ago when he was talking about all his mind stuff, and he had this Dr. Clayton Skaggs helping him with his mind and talking about juggling and all these, like all this stuff he was talking about at the press conference.
Going for the juggler.
Yeah. So I think he's tried everything really.
Well, clearly not playing the week before the event. Is that?
Well, 8 years actually, and it was 8 years since he last won a major. So who knows?
So this is the one.
It's hard to look. If he does it, he's in a bracket that Arnold Palmer, Seve, Tom Watson, none of those players are in. So He's nearly there, but not quite yet. And I know you're like your trips to America. What about this? November of next year, Saturday night, they're going to host a Grand Prix in Vegas. The track will include the Strip. How cool is that going to be? They've really got their act together in terms of promoting the sport, Formula One. And they've got a 3-year deal now for Las Vegas Grand Prix. Awesome stuff. And as we know, I'm sure you talked about in the show, Cork and Kerry being Killarney on May the...
What do you think, John?
Well, Tommy Rooney, we discussed Tab of the Morning, and I was thinking of Ed Sheeran songs, and it was Take Me Back to London. So Take Me Back to Killarney is an obvious one. Rebel Hell was another one I thought of. I know they're going to have the next 2 matches at Páirc Uí Chaoimh, but this thing about health and safety will only allow 11,000 people at Páirc Uí Rinn. So what? Hold it at Páirc Uí Rinn in front of 11,000 people. Make it something that, I really missed out on a chance to go to that game. I couldn't get a ticket, and now I'm actually hungry to get a ticket for next year's game.
Game in Páirc Uí Rinn, what's wrong with that?
9,000 actually, John.
Yeah, but they'll fix it to 11.
You just upset 2,000 loyal fans.
They'll get it to 11.
With season tickets, yeah, they would need to. To be honest,
a home game is a home game, and a away game is a away game. Oh no, sure, we'll give you this here, and you might take a couple of years back, and I don't know if it's going to be good for Keith Ricken, and Cork could be going down to Killarney and getting whooped.
What about the fact that they've filled their own stadium, their own championship stadium, with this foreign music
to pay for the stadium? If you borrow money, you have to pay it back.
And what about the hurlers, John? Why have they been paid in Páirc Uí Rinn?
You have to pay it back.
Why haven't the hurlers been paid in Páirc Uí Rinn?
Who cares about the hurlers? The footballers are a different thing. They're their own.
No, I'm going to what about all morning here, okay? and what about Páirc Uí Rinn when Páirc Uí Chaoimh was being built? Is that not good enough for the footballers even?
What about Windsor Park?
Exactly.
Yeah, no. Look, I just hope Cork have a respectable result on May the 7th, because you don't want them to be demoralised and licking their wins the rest of the championship.
It could be 30 points. So Tigers going to play, that we were talking about this a little bit earlier in the week. Are there still more signs? They keep talking about it in a way that it would be very disappointing for everybody if he didn't.
It's an interesting reaction to Tiger Woods, given he wasn't the most favoured person at Augusta a few years ago after the scandal, and now it's like it's almost, I'd say he's probably getting phone calls. Will he play? It is different. If Tiger Woods plays next week, it'll be a completely ceremonial situation, because he hasn't played in 17 months. He hasn't played since the 2020 Masters, which was held in November. When he went and won it in 2019, he played 5 tournaments before that year and been in the top 30 in all of them. It'll be completely ceremonial. It's all about his body. Only he knows the ravages that his body's been through, and his ability to black out pain, I don't know. He's got this superhuman ability to do it, so fair play to him. I think the fact that he travelled with his son, maybe he wants his son to see him play. That'll be pretty cool, because how many Masters has Tiger Woods got left in the locker? He's 46 now. He can play as many as he wants, but as he said before, getting up to the top of the mountain, he's already done that. He feels he doesn't have anything to prove. I don't think he'll ever be a contender for a major again, but it's a difficult terrain. It's not what you see on television. It's a hilly terrain. It's a long walk, and hopefully his body will stand up to it. It's different playing practice rounds in Florida or the Bahamas to playing at Augusta. But the thing about it is, there's so much muscle memory there, lads, that he'll probably be able to turn it into a 72 or better.
And that's all anybody wants to see, really. And the TV viewership figures will go up, and everybody's a winner.
Yeah, well, that's you can't ignore the TV viewership, which they've come around to embracing at Augusta, because for so many years they only showed the back nine. Actually, we got a panel on that on Saturday, by the way, if you're tuning in, folks, on OTB Sports Radio or on News Talk. Dermot Gleeson and Vincent Hogan, who both played the course. They both played the course on the Monday after the Masters. They can talk to us about both the course and also the complete idiosyncrasies of this cathedral of golf and of sport.
Do all the people working at Augusta still use blockias, I wonder?
What?
Did they all still use blockias? Did they even have blockias? Have they even got to this stage of the mobile cellular device?
Sorry, Eoin, I'm not with the lingo.
You know, that doesn't matter. I was just asking it, like, did they have mobile phones? It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter.
It's a pun on the Nokia, but it's a block.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I need to.
You know the things that you could drive over, and it would still be able to play Snake.
Is this how you spend your Saturday afternoons or Sunday afternoons in Kerry and the 4-wheel drive? You know.
Yeah.
Big Range Rover.
Yeah. I've been told to ask you about the Sagem 2000. What's that?
this is your revenge now, isn't it, for all these 80s pop references?
Yeah.
You've stored all this up for this day, and I've been caught unawares. I've been caught by surprise.
I would just love to see basically kind of a hidden camera documentary job inside the ropes of Augusta done.
Well, Berkman's Place is the one I'm interested in. That is the exclusive place that they. It's the hospitality at Augusta, which is only open once a year. And I checked the internet yesterday. I didn't see any photos of it. It's thousands of dollars to get in, and whatever whatever kind of lobster they have in there, or whatever. But that seems to be the most exclusive place, possibly in the world of sport.
All right. Bringing you more lobsters on Saturday afternoon from 1 o'clock. JD will be back with Off the Ball on News Talk, and as he said, on OTBSports.com as well. And you can get Virtual Insanity, and of course there'll be a Virtual Insanity special coming your way next week in advance of the Masters 2. It's 10 minutes past 9. We've got some more Joe Brolly goodness next, but here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock is Jack McCaffrey. Leaders' Questions is 3 o'clock. Our retro panel is Losing the Dressing Room at 4. Nigel Mansell is OTB Gold at 6. And tonight, live, Nathan, John Giles, and a preview of the League Hurling final. Back after this.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Are the rumours true that this is out of the Flooring Porter betting syndicate that we were...
They're trying to hide the money here, Will. That's what they're trying to do now.
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Jealous of all the inside analysis and crack on the football pod? Well, we've got you covered with the Hurling Pod. Join myself, Will O'Callaghan, along with James Skehill and Paul Murphy for the best insight this hurling season.
Waterford will go to this going, this is a great chance for silverware. We're here to win it. I think we'll see a savage Waterford team coming out. And I don't have the same questions about Waterford as I would with Cork in terms of will they turn up.
Subscribe to the Hurling Pod feed on the OTB Sports app now.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
One last question. Yes. The White House, how was it? Sure, you've got an inside scoop on something for us.
Well, Americans are completely insane as a country. So superficially, I mean, if you've got money, you're happy out there, it's great, you have a great life, and you're able to, sort of live that intellectual life and enjoy the benefits of what's going on there. But if you don't, and there are 35 million people living in trailer parks, there are 100 million people living in abject poverty, on sort of normal economic measurements of these things. So that you've got two Americas out there. And also then, increasingly with the Republicans' attack on truth and reality, that war on truth, which you need to mount if you're going to try and undermine any moves towards social protections for people, healthcare, all of those important things. But if you're just going to run the country for the elites, then you do what you do in America. You attack truth, you attack respected news outlets, and you end up with Donald Trump, with tax breaks for billionaires, with a country that's run by lobbyists and billionaires, and a small group of Republican politicians for the benefit of the few. I mean, it's a weird country. Like, they have the biggest number of murders every year in the world. I mean, when I was out there, I met one of the Marines' top snipers. Lovely fella, and he toured me around the green room, and he said, this is a particular favourite of the First Ladies, and, this is... And I was thinking to myself, that guy would shoot you in the face and not give it a second thought. It's on the face of it, it's a brilliant country and all of that, but the truth is very disturbing, and I think it's becoming a very dystopian place where millions, tens of millions of people are living in despair and poverty. I mean, drug use is endemic. Pharmaceutical companies can get away with whatever. I mean, many of the pharmaceutical companies are essentially like the mafia. They're just big drug dealing networks. We've seen that with the fentanyl scandals, for example, where they've been bribing doctors to prescribe these extremely dangerous opioids for conditions that they were never meant for. And then what happens is that after a 5-year investigation, the company pays $5 billion in compensation, but nobody goes to prison. I mean, it's a very dystopian society where the elites are almost fully insulated from the harm that they are deliberately causing to earn a few bucks, you know. And I think the lesson to be learned from Ukraine at the moment is the importance of us pulling together as good Europeans, you know, because we can see that the UK is starting to go exactly the same way as the US. The war on truth, the lies, the constant daily lies. You know, we're leading the world in bringing in refugees. What? Lying about where lying that refugee centres have been set up when they haven't been set up at all. I mean, the BBC sent a camera crew and said they couldn't find it. Priti Patel said there was a pop-up centre in Lille. The BBC can't find it, and the mayor said that he hadn't heard of it. And you know, the constant lies of Boris and all of that, and yet, you know, he got Brexit done, whatever that means, and that seems to be enough for people living in poverty in the once Labour-controlled areas of the north. You know, where food banks have flourished by over 1,000% in the last decade. And I see that the Trussell Trust are reporting this week that increasingly middle-class families are coming to them for food relief. Food relief. You know, people hungry and starving in a country as wealthy as England, you know, in a society as wealthy as the UK that's generating such billions. You know, and it's a warning to Ireland. It's a warning for us to make sure that we teach our children to think critically in the schools, you know, that we keep money out of politics, that we keep lobbyists out of politics, you know, that we ensure that our politicians have a vocation for service and are doing it for the right reasons, because it's remarkably easy to end up in a dystopian society where politics is run by the elites for the elites. And that's what we've seen in America, in Russia, increasingly in the UK. You know, I mean, and I think the greatest argument for not being involved with England is that it is increasingly a failed state. I mean, we don't want to be going down that road. And the sooner we start disengaging ourselves from them, the better, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, a warning, and also probably a signifier that things aren't as bad as we sometimes think around here either. When
but you can never be complacent.
Of course,
you know, that's what Ukraine teaches us. Yeah. I mean, we've become complacent. You know, the idea that after 1989, after the fall of Soviet Russia, that really in future, that was it. You know, Russia would move towards Europe. They would probably join Europe. The confederacies would probably join Europe. We would move towards an unparalleled era of cooperation. We would close down tax havens. You know, we would have progressive, sensible taxation. You know, and really we would harness the enormous resources of the world to make sure that no one was left behind, that everybody had an opportunity and felt free and were able to live a decent life. I mean, all of those things that we thought were going to happen. In fact, they haven't happened, and what's happening in the world is extremely worrying.
It's Joe Brolly with you in Belfast. How did you get on in Belfast? What did you make of it?
I love Belfast. It's a brilliant city, isn't it? There wasn't much of like making something of I suppose I hadn't been to Windsor Park before. That was probably the new element of being up there this time. It's a nice facility, and other than that, I guess I'd kind of been around to most of the places I was at before multiple times. And yeah, it's a great city, isn't it?
Have you been out in Belfast?
Yeah, a good few times. Yeah. It's
They're not closed at like 11:30.
Yeah, I was just about to say it would be great if it could push back to closing times. Although I guess I think it was a bit later. I think it has gone a bit later.
I mean, yeah,
recently
it feels like 11:30.
Sorry, yeah, but I
think it's a 1 o'clock closing time, isn't it?
Wasn't there something before COVID where the DUP had down tools and they were like, oh, finally we have to give up our fight against badness. And we will allow you to stay open till 2 a.m. because bad things happen between 1 and 2.
I mean, yeah, they had a few of their own.
But then I think that they just didn't do it after COVID. And wasn't that the same down here as well? Wasn't there some talk of
finally going to be free and be able to go till 4 o'clock in the morning like they are in every civilised city in the world?
Didn't Helen McEntee introduce some sort of bill in early 2020, and then all of a sudden COVID came and everything just got put to one side? And actually, Dublin's closing at things are stopping at least at 3 o'clock as opposed to 3:30, which was, if I'm not
very important half hour. Are they?
Well, that's just why. What's the difference? What's changed? And there was definitely talk about it beforehand that it would be. I'm not sure was it all night stuff, but that was definitely on the table. So north and south, there was definitely talk of more liberties when it came to nights, and both of those things seem to have been shelved for now.
In the aftermath of the discussions with Brolly and Finucane and the fans outside Windsor and everybody in the build-up about Casement, do you think Casement's going to go ahead, and do you think it's going to have any impact on the day-to-day life of non-GAA people?
No is definitely the answer to that second part of that question. I think it'll be good for a short amount of time, for that one summer, to have games in Belfast, and Casement is the only avenue to that, and that'll be good for, as I say, a short period of time. It's not going to have any impact on the day-to-day life of those people. They might go to Casement for concerts as well, and that'll be that, and it'll be a great accessible facility to have in their city. Better to have it than not to have it, though. It's not going to be this life-changing thing. For GAA people, I think it'll be a far more significant thing. I went out to Ardoyne yesterday as well. Going to put together a piece that'll go out hopefully over the next few days. And their whole point is that as people well involved in the GAA, they don't have a facility to point to and say, you can be playing there if you make a county final or whatever. And they feel that that's having a real and meaningful impact on grassroots GAA. On top of that as well then is the kind of question about facilities for young GAA people in certain areas of Belfast, and North Belfast is one of those places where there is plenty of places to go and play football, but there are very few places to go and play GAA, where they're constantly renting out and paying a lot of money per year to rent out field spaces, green spaces, in order for their kids to actually play on it. So that for me is the greater question about young GAA people in Belfast, about the availability of green spaces, especially in the north side of the city. Casement will be a nice thing, and it's an essential thing in some ways if you want to put on big ticket events, which will be great for people. But I think on the day-to-day life there are far more important questions around that city. Now then, the first part of your question, will it or will it not happen? We'll have to see after Easter when this judicial review kind of comes to a head, whether or not the residents will have their complaints upheld. Because if they aren't, then I think away you go.
Yeah, this is the second judicial review, that was it?
Yeah.
I didn't really understand that whole... It got very complicated.
Yeah, the first one was upheld, so they reduced the capacity then.
Okay.
So it was a 38,000-seater stadium. Now it's down to about 32,000, I think, is for the planning permission that was granted last year.
Right.
So they're now saying that the planning permission was A, unlawful because there was no executive, and B, there was complaints from the residents still about this potentially being used for concerts, the Euros. You're telling us this is a GAA venue. Well, what's the story about the Euros? What's the story about these concerts potentially coming to Casement? I'm not sure if those arguments are actually part of the current one.
The suggestion seemed to be that like a negotiated response to that for the local community might have got that over the line. That if you were to say, well, we'll build a community centre, or we will put funding into these following local amenities, then the residents might have been like, okay, that's what we wanted.
Yeah. That's what Joe Brolly was certainly saying in the piece we played yesterday, that it could have been dealt with better at the time. There could have been a better dialogue with some of the local residents. There is no getting away from the fact that there is definitely an air of what we've seen in Croke Park down through the years with the relationship between the stadium and the residents, and maybe the GAA as a whole could have taken a few learnings, to use that terrible phrase, but from that into this a little bit better. And that's not just about Gareth Brooks, that's the handball situation in and around Croke Park as well. And obviously one of the people who would have been leading the charge from the residents' perspective in and around Croke Park would have been Eamon O'Brien, and he's also involved with the residents, and has been involved with the residents in Belfast as well.
We should get him on to see what he has to say about that.
100%,
and what the similarities are, and what for future projects might be a better way of doing this.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it is interesting that, because, like, I mean, it's completely prejudicial on my side of things, but if I was to predict what Joe Brolly would have said about residents around that area, I would have expected him to say, oh, they need to stop their complaints and let us build our stadium. And in actual fact, that's not what he's saying at all. He's saying that actually and maybe this is indicative of a wider view that maybe we don't have enough in this part of the country. His view is very much listen to both sides of the argument and then proceed. But as you could hear from himself and John Finucane yesterday as well, their whole perspective on life at the moment is that nobody really cares about that, I guess, ultimate question about a one island approach to life in general. Their kids, especially those who are going to university and beyond, just are concerned about day-to-day life, and day-to-day life is pretty integrated once you get to a certain point in your life.
All right, If you've got a view on that, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream, or you can text us 0879 180 180. That's the number. You can WhatsApp us, probably the easiest way. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, Rebecca Clancy joined Richie on last night's OTB for a chat about the start of the Formula 1 season, and specifically the scenes in Saudi Arabia last weekend. You can hear the full chat on podcast. You need to subscribe to OTB Highlights. Here's Rebecca talking about what it was like covering the Saudi Grand Prix.
There was a couple of comments made by certain senior bosses saying, well, this is just the culture. So when we were in Bahrain for the first race of the season,
that's nuts.
The Sunday race, there was a missile that hit in Saudi and Jeddah, where the race is in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And there was a thought of, gosh, like that's only a week before we're due to go racing there. Like, is everything okay? And the talk afterwards was, well, this is the culture that they live in. And this war with that Saudi Arabia-led coalition in Yemen with the Houthi rebels, this has been going on for 7 years now. So when Formula One signed the contract initially to host 10 years of a race there, they knew what was going on. They knew exactly the situation. Missiles dropping within Saudi are not uncommon. And one of the lines that we were being fed is that the Houthi rebels only target infrastructure. They do not target civilians. But you cannot help but think in the back of your mind, well, wouldn't it make a statement if they changed their tactics just while F1 is there? And that's a really uncomfortable thought, a really, really deeply uncomfortable thought, because if you think about the British Grand Prix, for example, if a missile dropped within 10 miles, there is absolutely no way that weekend would have continued. There is no other track on the calendar, and there are 23 of them this year that I can think of, that the race would have gone ahead. And so to say that it was just the culture and this is what they live with and this is what happens in that region, for me, isn't a good enough reason to have continued with the weekend. And I think it's one of F1's darkest weekends that they've pushed ahead with it.
Rebecca Clancy of The Times in conversation with Richie last night on Wednesday Nights Off the Ball. Nathan will be in situ tonight for Thursday Nights Off the Ball on Newstalk. And Shane Hannon is with us this morning to talk to us about the breaking news. Vegas, baby. I mean, I know you're an international man of mystery and you like to go travelling and, you know, you're going to climb Everest at some point, but Vegas, baby. Vegas.
Well,
it's Vegas, baby.
I've never been to Vegas, but it's going on my list. Sin City. It could be Spin City when the F1 goes there, but it's going to be fun. I think Martin Brundle said on Twitter this morning, this is Formula One cracking the US after 72 years of trying. So really, really exciting. Can you just imagine, like, going past the Bellagio, past the MGM Grand, past Caesar's Palace? This is what the sport and the as you guys said earlier, the marketing of the sport is all about.
It's going to be a street race, is it? I mean, I guess, I don't know. Is there a track there? So will it be on the streets?
It's going to be built around the strip, essentially. So it's going to be like, this is the thing for the drivers. I guess that the walls have to be quite high for safety reasons. So their view of the strip itself might be curtailed, but the TV pictures are going to be unlike anything we've ever seen before. I mean, we've seen them in Monaco, but it's not quite the stunning vistas and backdrop of Vegas and the Nevada desert in the background. I mean, this is incredible. And like, they've tried Vegas before, or they've tried Nevada before, I should say. So this was back in the 80s. So 81 and 82, the Caesar's Palace Grand Prix they held basically in a car park adjacent to the casino, and they were grim. They were really, really terrible, and they probably didn't go back for good reason. But money talks, lads, and this is what, like, we heard the clip from Rebecca Clancy last night with Richie talking about the Jeddah Grand Prix, and we all know the sports washing and the issues behind that, and the drivers did not want that race to take place. But when you look at the figures for this one in Vegas, 100 million per race, essentially, they're expecting it to be more than just a few years. This could be up to a decade of contracts with Vegas. Billion quid, and then they're expecting about $500 million in revenue for the area as well in Vegas, with all the fans heading over and merchandise and all the rest. So this is lucrative.
That 81, 82 Caesar Palace car park event sounds like officially the seediest sporting event in history. LOI Late Night should do an OB from that car park. It just seems like it'd work. So like, you've got Vegas, you've got Austin, you've got Miami from this year. Is this where it stops, or is this actually going to be 4 or 5 potentially US races per year? Is that where they want to get to?
They seem to be suggesting that it's not going to go past the 3 at this point. So, like, we know the success of the Austin Grand Prix. It's one of the best races on the racing calendar every year. Miami, they're trying out this year for the first time, and I mean, in the sun in Miami, it's set up perfectly for a Formula One race. But they seem to be saying in these press conferences that this is the third and last one that America will get. The only thing, Owen, is like the calendar, the F1 calendar is already massively challenged and demanding for the drivers. So 23 races this year. The contracts allow for a maximum of 24 per year. And Stefano Domenicali, the F1 CEO, saying that they could support as many as 30 in a season. I don't know what the drivers would feel about that, but we have this familiar end of season schedule, which has one in Texas and Austin, as you said, one in Mexico, another in Brazil around October, November. This one in Vegas is probably going to coincide with Thanksgiving in America, which is only going to add to the excitement. And I mean, we've seen the increase in interest thanks to Drive Survive over in the States. But I mean, it's tough to squeeze it in, and it's tough to see where it fits in the calendar. And it is the perfect marriage. The only thing is, and myself and yourself, Owen, have spoken about this before in the past, that the time that Formula One is available to view is very important. And what time are we at? We're at 9:30 in the morning, Irish time here at the minute. The Grand Prix would have actually ended a couple of hours ago. It's supposed to start at 10 p.m. Vegas time, so this could be a 6 a.m. start to the Formula One Irish time, which is bizarre.
6 a.m. is okay, I think. It's like the American football games are possible to watch. Like, it's obviously 8 hours to Vegas, right?
Yeah, so I think it's 7 or 8 hours. Yeah, it could be 7 hours to Vegas, but either way, it's going to be early hours. But yeah, I guess
3-4 in the morning, no thanks. But 6 you can do as a one-off.
Yeah, at least you're maybe.
And it's a Sunday, not a Monday. That's the other thing.
Yeah, and they're doing it like this race is on a Saturday for the first time ever. So I assume Saturday 10 p.m. is going to be into Sunday morning our time, if that's the way they're planning it. So it's a little bit different.
Well, it shows a level of flexibility that was not there when Bernie Ecclestone was in charge. That they would never have done any of this stuff. They would never have moved the Saturday. No one was allowed to film anything. There was no social media properly embraced, and all of a sudden they realise that there's a massive audience out there, and it seems to be working.
Well, it's capitalism at its finest, Ger, and like. The fact is, at least, like I was over at the Belgian Grand Prix last year that never was over in Spa, and Spa is surrounded by a forest. You've got the Ardennes forest around you, and it's quite difficult to get to, a little bit of an effort to get to from Liège, maybe an hour out of Liège. But the thing about Vegas, people are in Vegas anyway. I mean, the crowds that are going to be there is stunning. I think it was 140,000 that made it to the Austin Grand Prix in Texas, and that's just outside Austin. The fact that it's on the Strip in Vegas, I mean, the numbers here are going to be quite off the scale. So another massive move for Formula One and its fans, I think.
All right. Shane, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Good stuff, lads.
Shane Hannon giving us his thoughts on the breaking news this morning that we've had all this trouble with the Grand Prix in Saudi Arabia. We need a big announcement. I know what we'll do. We'll give them some little tidbit of information. Oh, Vegas, baby. Vegas. That'll do it.
Yeah, they had to have that car just for one little emergency, and this was it.
Yeah, so there you go. Right, that is your lot from OTB AM today. Tomorrow morning, it's Friday, which means that we'll have a packed show, including the crappy quiz, perhaps. This is breaking news to you, is it?
Let's do it. Why not?
We're going to leave you here with Jerry Thorney on Wednesday Night Rugby. Should booze be banned at Irish rugby games during the match? Just for like the 100 minutes that the match is actually on for, you won't be able to get booze. Maybe they could just deliver it to your seat. That'd be fine, wouldn't it?
But then you also need to go to the bathroom.
Well, no, just get one of those little, what was it? The little fake thing?
The little fake thing?
Yeah, that was for cheating on your booze test.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of one of those.
With Nell Nye. 9:32 this morning. Okay, right. Well, there you go. Yeah, got out of that one. Should booze be banned at Irish rugby games in the Aviva Stadium? Don't think anybody noticed. We'll fix it in post.
Richie McCormack here with you this evening, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined on the line as well by the Irish Times rugby correspondent Jerry Thorney. Jerry, good evening to you.
Good evening, Richie.
Jerry, you had a very thought-provoking piece, and a piece that provoked plenty of reaction in the paper this week, essentially calling for, at the very least anyway, a discussion around the issue of alcohol within the Aviva Stadium, because the issue of atmosphere, or lack thereof, during the course of the Six Nations has reared its head, particularly on the back of the Scotland game a couple of weeks ago, as your piece opened with the other day, saying last Saturday week an 80-year-old rugby supporter was taken to his first game in the Aviva Stadium in several years. It had barely kicked off when he was first obliged to stand up for someone to walk past him or return to their seat, usually with a tray of pints. This constant flow of people became so tediously repetitive that he began to keep count. By the time the game had finished, he reckoned he had stood up 73 times. He won't be going back. His story is not alone, and his story is not a standalone one, and it's one that has been repeated time and oft through the course of the Aviva, I guess, going back over a decade now since it was reopened and remodelled and restyled and all that kind of thing. This problem seems to only be snowballing, though, in the last couple of years, and particularly, I guess, since fans have come back in after the pandemic, but after the pandemic lockdowns and lockouts. It's bad, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The column appears to have struck a chord with an awful lot of people who suffered the Aviva experience and are not greatly enamoured by it anymore. I was quite struck by, like, all the stories I wrote in that piece, Richie, were directly conveyed to me. That one in particular, but through direct conversation. Others through more conversations, whether text messages then or emails or whatever, they were all directly relayed to me. And I just thought, okay, I've touched a nerve here. I'm just going to give vent to them and see what happens. And I'm motivated not to be a killjoy. I don't want people to stop drinking. I mean, the headline of the piece said ban booze. I'm not saying we should ban all alcohol from the Aviva because, you know, I mean, good mates of mine would wonder why on earth Jerry Thorney would be doing something like that. He's known to like a pint occasionally himself. So I want people to enjoy themselves. But I've been to Croke Park and I drew on that experience a lot. I've been to a few big games in Croke Park, fortunate enough to get there. And it's kind of like theatre rules apply. You know, the bars are open beforehand, as much drink as you want beforehand. Then they close so people get seated. Key difference. You're not allowed to bring alcohol into your seats. The stewards there will prevent you from doing so. So you sit down in your seats, you watch the first half, then you can go at half time, have another pint or two if you're a really quick drinker, chat about it with other people about the game, go back in, sit down in your seats and watch the second half unfold, and then the bars stay open afterwards. I know there's a 21-year agreement in place with the company Compass, which looks after all the catering and all the bars at every level in the Aviva Stadium. So I don't imagine there will be a ban on booze anytime soon, least of all at the, quote, Guinness Six Nations. But if the theatre rules applied, I think would go some way to alleviating the discomfort that an awful lot of supporters find just by this 80-year-old man's experience of constantly getting to their feet and back down again and up again for people going to the loo and coming back with trays of pints. It's just, and I've heard loads of anecdotal stories on the back of the piece, which, I mean, my email box has been inundated with people who just talk about fights in the crowd, of beer being spilled on them, puddles of beer on the ground, people forgetting where their seats are, just a lack of interest in the match, just conversations going on and so on. And it just seems to me that there's a myriad of problems here, but you know, one of the ways of making it a more enjoyable experience for a full house at the Aviva would be just prevent people bringing trays of beer to their seats.
On the flip side of that, there are the people who are indulging in going out and getting trays of pints and coming back and going back to their seat, and they will say that that's all part of their experience of it, and that there's, you know, probably as many people who enjoy that side of things as there are the people who are currently filling your inbox and filling letters into the Times about this thing. But it's clearly an appetite for that kind of social occasion to be surrounding a Six Nations game. And it's, I guess, trying to appease everybody is never going to be easy in these kind of situations, and trying to find the right balance, particularly when you've got an IRFU who are trying to wipe out a 10 million deficit from last year, really.
Yeah, I would agree. And people who, you know, drink throughout the game bring a lot of revenue to the Aviva Stadium as well. And, you know, their wishes have to be accommodated too. I suppose you could leave the bars open, but if you want to have a drink, then have a drink in the concourse, because you're affecting the enjoyment of the game for all those who are sitting in their seats and who aren't going out during the course of the match to buy trays of lager or whatever else, or Guinness, whatever else. You're affecting their experience. And an awful lot of people seem just not to be enjoying the experience anymore. I'm amazed how many emails I've received from people who are 3-year, 5-year, 10-year ticket holders who have not resumed their tickets. And I think the IRFU have got a real problem here, Richie, because if this continues, you might find empty seats in the future. Wales have had a very, very similar issue and brought in alcohol-free zones in the ground. And there were 11,000 empty seats, mostly in those alcohol-free zones, for the Friday night game between Wales and France. Now, whether that would have been the case anyway, because it was a Friday night game, I don't know. There were another 12 or 13,000 empty seats as well when they played Italy as well. So, like, it's a big issue, but you compare and contrast the experience with football. There's, in the Aviva Stadium, like for the Belgian match, there was a cracking atmosphere. Speaking to people who've been at both Six Nations games and the Belgian game, it was much better for the football, even though there were still issues around people going back and forth and bringing drinks. By and large, more people stayed engaged in the actual match and cheered and roared and sang, which is something that the home crowd and what was the old Lansdowne Road of Blanc seemingly forgotten now. I just want as well a lot of other things to try and improve the atmosphere there. A professional DJ, maybe look at the different music that's being played, emulate the Stade de France experience whereby, when you call out the names of the Irish players at the start, you only call out their first name so that the crowd can roar their second names, just to engage the crowd more. As it is, they're removed from it and are watching it as an experience, almost as if they're at home on TV. And therein lies the other rub. A lot of the genuine rugby fans have stopped going because they think they enjoy it more from watching it at home with a group of friends or family, whatever else, because the analysis is improving all the time. The TV experience has been getting better all the time.
And with that as well, I don't think the atmosphere thing and the points thing is even combined to football. Like this is Wednesday night rugby, but I was obviously at the FAI Cup final back in November. And there's a similar issue at games like that, whereby it's more of a social occasion. The tickets weirdly are at the other end of the spectrum, so tickets would have been fairly cheap to get as big a crowd as possible in. But the knock-on of that is that you've got people who aren't necessarily as invested in the game, and their way of counterbalancing not being invested in the game is to go out and get as many points on board as they can, and that means getting up and getting out. And I'm not going to say it was 73 times up and down, but it was damn close to it during the course of in the West Stand. And similarly, it seems that there's an engagement issue, and that can happen because rugby is a slightly more technical game. So if you've got a bunch of day trippers, as they're called in your piece, that are going to the game, they might find it hard to follow. The way around that, to still enjoy being there, is to get a bunch of points on board. Is it an engagement issue, and can you actually force those kinds of engagement aspects that you mentioned there, the call and response nature that they have at the Stade de France? Those kind of things are actually hard to get going. You need a kind of a history of fan culture and a history of those things happening for them to snowball and actually take on more of a meaning during an international game.
Yes, I suppose you're right. And the more successful a team becomes, the more it will attract a different demographic of day trippers, for want of a better word, or people who want to be seen at an occasion like that because the Irish team has become more successful. But it just seems ironic that this is the Irish rugby team that's probably playing the best brand of rugby of any Irish team ever, that scored the most number of tries it's ever scored in the Six Nations, that was trying to win a triple crown at home for the first time in 18 years, that still had a chance of winning the title. And, with a 4:45 kickoff on Saturday and a glorious sunny day. I mean, talking to Joe Malloy in this show a couple of weeks back, he admitted to me that in the Virgin Media studios, he wasn't getting the right feed from the Aviva. It was so quiet coming through from the studio. If you compare and contrast that, I can't just emulate the Croke Park experience. Yes, you can have a drink. Yes, you can have as much drink as you want. But when the match is on, and that's the centrepiece of the day. And it's not impaired for all the viewers who want to watch the game and are engaged in the game. And I do think that definitely, a different musical set before and a different way of involving the crowd before and would certainly help with a professional DJ. I mean, I don't want to hear countdowns, kickoff, 10, 9, 8, 7. Spare me that. I'm sick of hearing stewards to end of match positions. It's like it prompts a stampede to the exits when you hear that. Yeah. I don't hear any other ground. I just think there's a lot more that could be done. I think looking at the way the tickets are now being dispersed and it seems from all the not exact signs, but it does seem like maybe as a result of the pandemic, Richie, that clubs are giving their tickets away to the highest bidders and less tickets are going to genuine rugby fans, be it club supporters, club members and so forth. And this is why it's nothing like the old Lansdowne Road. And it's not that you can't blame it on the stadium. You can't blame it entirely on the bars being open, because last November for a Sunday afternoon game, the stadium rocked because the All Blacks were in town and they had the haka, and that made everybody get to their seats, in plenty of time. I do know from speaking to players and coaches and so forth involved in the Irish team, there is a sense that the Irish crowd is much better when Ireland are underdogs. Irish crowds don't do favouritism very well, and the problem with the 3 home games this year was that Ireland were seen as very strong favourites and expected to win.
What way are the tickets proportioned? Like you mentioned, there's a certain amount obviously go to the clubs, and then there's a lot more end up on Ticketmaster, and they're not cheap, to put it mildly. Like what way are they distributed in that respect? And is there a way that the RFU could possibly change that would foster a better atmosphere within the stadium?
It's a tough one, because like the clubs have been hit really hard by the pandemic, harder than any other sector in the game. The one way of generating money is to sell their tickets, and I believe their allocation has been reduced. I don't know what it is. So therefore, at a stroke, you're getting less club members going to matches. So that is a problem. One of the many tiers to this next subject that the RFU will have to address. And this is the time to address it, Richie, because we're now looking at the next home games, the Aviva Stadium being next November. So there's a lot that can be done between now and then. And it's not an issue unique to Irish rugby. It's very much an issue that's affected Welsh rugby as well, as we mentioned earlier, with the Principality Stadium. But you know that in the Soccer World Cup qualifying match in Wales and Austria, 35,000 there, no booze sold inside the ground, or if it is, I think you're going to drink out in the concourse. By comparison, the atmosphere was electric. It's been the big source of debate in Wales for the past week as well. So much so that the Welsh football team would not want to go back, even if they were playing Scotland in their final World Cup qualifier. Imagine that, Wales v Scotland. They would rather have it in 35,000 capacity Cardiff City than go back to the Principality Stadium, because the atmosphere there can be so bad. So it's not to do with the size of the stadium either. It's to do with how tickets are distributed, how the day is run and overseen, and in whether it's bars being open during the match or beer being allowed brought back to a seat or not. There's lots of ways this can be addressed, and I really think the RFU have to address it, Richie, because otherwise we're going to see 10 or 11,000 empty seats when the team is not doing so well.
The Welsh issue was slightly different, because they had disorder problems, essentially, like pronounced disorder problems at the Principality, where there were pitch invasions and there were slight disturbances in the crowd and so on and so forth. So they really came down hard, I think, at the back end of last year to say, listen, this isn't going to happen again. We're not going to essentially allow what happened in November or in the Six Nations last year to happen this year, because it was way out of order, and it was a safety issue when you have randomers coming on and getting involved in the anthems and the team lineups. So you can understand that. I just don't see there's an easy fix beyond just don't let them bring pints back to your seats. That seems like the handiest one, and it still allows people to go and get drink, but it might temper the fact that you need to go and get loaded and you can go as many times as you want, and you can maybe just sit down and watch the game, the purpose for which you're supposed to be there.
Yes, exactly. And it means that all the people who want to sit down and watch the game can do so without getting beat 73 times, regardless of what age they are. So it would just mean less. And every time one person has to get up 73 times, it means that whole row has to get up 73 times, and probably the row behind them, if they're going to carry on watching the match. So I just think it's just only fair for people who have purchased good money to buy tickets that they be allowed to enjoy the match day experience by actually watching the match unfold. And I do think there's a lot more that can be done in the PA system before the game, during the pre-match entertainment. I think all of that needs to be looked at as well as a better means of engaging the fans from beforehand. Do you understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a lot more that can be done, Richie. I agree with you. It's not quite the same problem that it became evidently in the Principality Stadium, where you had a pitch invader who probably affected the result of their game against South Africa. Things haven't got to that impasse with the Aviva Stadium, but it's on that path. It's on that track. It's not an enjoyable experience for a lot of genuine rugby fans anymore. And that's clearly the case based on all the anecdotal evidence of this past week. And this issue's been going on for years. I'm late to it. Like, I'm privileged. I sit in the press box. There's no overflow. There's no aisles beside me. I'm not having people go past and forth me with trays of drink, but I'm hearing all these stories from people who no longer enjoy the experience. And in Wales, I got a good sense of it, because the press box is down by close to pitch side. It's a low level. And you do see a lot of this traffic going back and forth, and you do have to jump up in your seat to see the game because the fans in front of you are doing so. So I have an idea what it's like in the Principality as well. Interestingly, in the Stade de France, which I know hasn't always been great over the years, Bernard Laporte called them the bourgeoisie shits, pardon my French, but that's the exact phrase he used. They could be pretty lifeless years gone past. They became quite disengaged from their French rugby team because it was so unsuccessful. And they're fully back on board now with this team, this new Fabien Galtier side, young side, playing brilliant rugby. And of course, they're winning their first Grand Slam in 12 years, and they're doing it on a Saturday night at home against England. But their bars were closed for the Ireland game for COVID reasons. It didn't affect the atmosphere one iota. You know what I mean? The atmosphere was still absolutely electric, was brilliant. And talking to somebody who was at the France-England game, when they turned off the playing of the La Marseillaise before the kickoff and let the fans sing the rest of their national anthem, it said it was truly spine-tingling. He said, Jerry, with the best will in the world, it was like a sounding off to war. You know what I mean? It was like a song. It was like, we're here to protect our country kind of thing. It was in the best means possible, because I know there's much bigger issues going on in the world than the behaviour of fans of football matches, which is not a terribly big problem at all. But he said it was just an electric atmosphere. And I would love to see that come back to the Aviva Stadium. That's all I want to see.
It is possible. I mean, we've seen it in different instances. The Belgium game, obviously at the weekend, in terms of soccer, like it is achievable. And
exactly, and the All Blacks game last November. Sure. And there's been England games over the years in the Aviva. Again, maybe because against the All Blacks and England are perceived as that bit more, I don't know, underdogs, and the crowd are more engaged as a result, and maybe more genuine rugby fans make a better attempt to go pick and choose their matches and go to those ones.
Yeah. Rugby on off the ball, of course, with thanks to Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. The main news provincially, I guess, this week, Jerry, is the departures from Munster. Damien de Allende is going possibly to Japan, or probably to Japan, it seems, and Chris Clute is going to follow Johan van Graan over to Bath. But in terms of de Allende, when the signing was confirmed, when the twin signings of himself and RG Snyman, there was great excitement about Munster. Now that he's departing, there's almost a sense of Damien de Allende we hardly knew ye. And I don't think it's his fault necessarily. He just happened to sign at a very horrible time for absolutely everybody. And that stat that you threw out there in your piece about him, that in 6 games against Leinster, this one coming up this week will be the first in front of fans, that probably encapsulates Damien de Allende's tenure at Munster more than any other playing stat that you could throw forward. That not many people have gotten the chance to see him, and I guess that's affected how his 2-year spell at Munster will be viewed. Yeah. I mean, his timing was so unfortunate for him. Luckily, he could bring his wife over, but I'd say other than that, it must have been a very difficult time for all the Southern Hemisphere overseas-based players living abroad, playing abroad in Ireland. And that would be a common theme throughout the global rugby game. You think of Finlay Bealham seeing his parents for the first time in 2.5 years after he got that try against England, the bonus point try. First time he'd seen them in over 2.5 years. How emotional that must have been, and how difficult it must have been for all these players away from home, communicating only through Zooms or FaceTime or whatever else. And yeah, and that was a remarkable stuff. And I looked up myself, but all those games against Leinster, all behind closed doors. And that probably does add to the sense that they hardly got to know him. I think back to his first half performance against Toulouse, and he absolutely cut them apart. He's much more than a crash ball merchant. Munster used him actually quite well with some very clever strike moves as a decoy. He's got good hands, and he's actually a very elusive runner. It's not just all about the power and strength. He's a very good tackler. And that first half against Toulouse, he cut them apart. And for some reason, he hardly got the ball in the second half, which I couldn't quite fathom. But imagine if that had been packed Thomond Park as Damien de Allende was tearing the Toulouse midfield to shreds, and how differently you're right, the perception of his time here in Munster might have been. The good thing, at least for him, is he's determined to sign off on a positive note. He clearly did enjoy his time here, because I asked him what would he miss most. He said the players, straight away the players, and also the coaches, and to a less extent the Guinness. But, he was probably never going to stay more than 2 years. That was always the feeling anyway, Richie, that he was going to go back to Japan. It was just a 2-year, he planned for a 2-year stopover, and he chose Munster. And, and with the best one in the world, hope to do other problems or anybody else, but we would like to see a lot more of him now in the season running, because they're coming to a very defining period in the season. And this is what he was signed for, these kind of games, Leinster, extra, back-to-back, followed by Ulster. Yeah, he could have a big part to play. Before we let you go, Jerry, just want to ask you about Ireland's test, I guess, over in Toulouse this weekend, the second game of the Women's Six Nations. We've got the Women's Six Nations show on the way, so we're going to look at this in a little bit more depth. But it's a very, very tough ask for this Ireland team, especially off the back of that defeat against Wales at the RDS last Saturday, for them to go and get a result. This is... It's a case of not, I don't want to say not being humiliated, but showing again, I guess in a different way, the progress is being made with this side.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe the expectations of beating Wales at home were a little bit unrealistic based on a deceptive 45-0 win a year ago. Welsh team now has 7 Bristol-based players. It's got 12 full-time contracts, all the rest, another 15 part-time contracts. This is a new Irish team. Only 5 of the team that started against Wales a year ago started again last Saturday. I thought there was lots to admire in the performance. I thought the dual playmaker thing worked with Stacey Flood at inside centre, worked really well. 3 absolutely cracking tries, but they were living off scraps and ultimately overpowered by a Welsh side that is way more bulk and size and physicality up front and bigger maul and scrum and dominate possession. And the tackle count was ridiculous by the Irish team. Niamh Jones made, I think, 23 tackles. They had 93% tackle rate. And they're going to be required to do more of the same for sure in Toulouse, because this French team is flying. I went to the game the last time they played in Donnybrook. I think France won by about 30 points, and it was really striking how much more pace they had and just more athleticism and just looked better conditioned. And you know, they're full time. They're really going for the title. It looks like a shootout between them and England. There'll be a big crowd in Toulouse. It's a big, tough ask for this Irish team, no doubt. To some degree, though, I think it's a pre-hit, and if they, like you say, if they just carry on showing the improvement they showed with, you know, a newish team, fairly newish team, and score a few tries and just come back with some confidence from the game, that evidence of making further strides forward, and then target the 2 home games against Italy and Scotland, either side of going to England, it'll still have been a relatively satisfactory first championship for this new era.
Yeah, Jerry, thanks so much. We'll let you get back to clicking off those unread emails in your inbox at the moment.
Cheers, Richie.
Always,
take care.
Always a pleasure, Jerry. And as I say, we've got full analysis of that game against France in Toulouse on the way next.
I mean, it's sports washing in the most blatant degree, isn't it? I mean, quite literally washing your laundry, hanging it out for everybody to see. It's disturbing in the sense of, before we went racing in Bahrain, the drivers came together and they stood in front of a sign which said "No War," and it was referring to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And we know what happened as soon as the invasion started. Formula One came out and they said, we will not be racing in Russia this year, and that's it, end of conversation. And then a couple of days later they said, we're never going back to Russia, contract has been terminated. So we know Formula One has it within them to do the right thing and to cancel contracts. And then we have this bizarre moment where sort of, I think it was even 10 days later, we are racing in what is effectively a war zone. And so you sort of think, well, does no war just come with an asterisk that's if it's in Europe, and then we don't go ahead with it? But if it's in the Middle East and they're paying us 50 million a year, then perhaps we'll just make sure everything's okay. And you're right, the drivers have come out now and they've made it quite clear that they want to have discussions about where we go racing in the future. They want to be part of F1's discussions. But I can absolutely say with a fair amount of certainty that while they may be indulged and their ideas may be listened to, F1 is going back to Saudi. I don't think there's any doubt about that, to be honest. I wish I was wrong. I would love to be wrong. But I think that they will continue because they keep peddling the line, and we get this with every sport. We get it with, you look at football going to Qatar this year. I mean, we go to Bahrain. Formula One's been there since 2004. Every single year I write about human rights abuses. So I'm not sure it is improving like they're saying. But sport peddles this line that because we're there, we can make a difference. We can enact change. We can move these societies forward. We can make them more Western, I suppose, in the way that they think about things. And we can make them more about equality and more liberal. And so that they aren't executing 81 men in one day, which is what happened in Saudi earlier this month. And I don't think that's good enough. And I wrote about it at the time that the deal was announced. And I said, it's a 10-year deal with Saudi. And I said, that's fine if Formula One, if sport is making a difference, if it is opening up society and making it fairer for everybody. I think every contract in these places should come with a clause, a break clause, where I don't know how you measure it. People far cleverer than me can come up with that. But I think there should be some sort of break clause where you say, okay, we're not seeing the change that we expected. These are still the conversations that are going on. And because of that, we can no longer hold our sporting event in your country. And I think that's far more powerful than every year just promising that you're going to turn up and take the money.
We know what James McClean can do, in much the same point that you're making, but sometimes you need to get your best team together to go and say, do you know what, a test of this team that is still in its infancy and still in, you know, its development is to go and see, right, we need to go and score a late goal against Lithuania, what have you got? Let's put on the big guns. I don't mind that so much. You don't always need to give young guys the run, because what good is the run to them in a situation that isn't going to be replicated and they're not going to be playing with the players they're going to be playing, etc. But in this case, I just think that we've seen what McClean can do so many times against the lesser teams. I think that we need a slightly different type of player in that position again, it's a weird one. I honestly think that James McLean should be held for the bigger games. It's a very, very strange opinion, I'll grant you. But I think that he offers something serious against Belgium. You could pick out 5 or 6 things. I've heard people talk about it, about what James McLean didn't do, or bad balls or bad crosses against Belgium. But in general, I thought he contributed to the game. Last night, I just thought he got in the way.
He was almost in for he almost set up a goal, but was undone by a late Troy Parrott pass. But Parrott is the one plus point really to come out of that game. That and Josh Cullen, like Stephen Doyle outside made the point, Josh Cullen had a hell of a night last night by not playing. And I think Adamida had a great week as well by not playing.
Yeah.
Because you suddenly see what they do offer by virtue of their absence.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought we saw a lot of what Josh Cullen could offer on Saturday as well, though, in terms of what he actually did on the field. But yeah, I tend to agree with you about Adamida. The forwards are just so frustrating at times, because we've got the Callum Robinson that we just don't know which one we're going to get in the day, and he has to be in the team because of how good he can be on his day. And we're actually getting it even in bursts within games now, and he's disappearing, and then he might do something brilliant like he did at the weekend. It's just so frustrating. Look, Richie, we have the players to play any kind of way possible. I'm not going to this reductive argument of you have to play a certain way, but we don't have the players to be picking and choosing as to who is good enough for international football.
And we're not going to magic them out of nowhere either.
No.
So we have to kind of.
So was it? See, that's the point though. Was last night back to? You're kind of saying, it was a nothing friendly, and it felt like an old school against Switzerland or whatever. But for me, there was times last night where it was back to the frustrations of what am I doing? Why am I watching this match? What good is it doing for my life?
Myself through this.
And I didn't feel like that for the last 4 or 5 months or whatever, last 10 games or whatever.
It's an after the Lord Mayor show thing, because Belgium was always going to be the one.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor.